MPs all over the world, and they wanted to talk about why it's important for them, nation states, family, religious values, and so on and so on. And Brussels liberals, they want to ban this conference, and they did everything to ban it. I mean, it became such a big scandal that some prime ministers had to actively engage, and then immediately, which is the most funniest part of it, when the Prime Minister of Belgium engaged and tweeted something that probably it's too much, then the court immediately changed its mind and they let the conference going on. We have to find our way to cooperate on a pragmatic, national interest-based type of cooperation with everybody. There are sovereign countries and powerhouses, and we in Europe, we have to figure out how to deal with them, whether we like it or not. This is the new reality.
Balázs Orbán, thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, we made it to Friday, folks. Good morning. And hello, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We are live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Great to be with you. Thanks for joining us. Show's on air till 8:37. Traffic's fine. Let's say good morning to the team. Kevin Ipatebo behind the controls of YouTube. I'd like to introduce Kevin first today. Surprise! I always love when Kevin gives the big wave on YouTube so you can just see his arm. We'll have to get you in front of the actual camera one day, Kev. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls this morning. Hi, Abby. Abby covers weather on our show. And Chloe Friesen, hello. Chloe is our studio director, and Chloe will be on air. There's Chloe's face on YouTube. Chloe's going to be on air with us here covering the commute this morning. All right, let's get into the weather briefly, and then we'll turn our attention to our news center. It will be windy today. If you thought yesterday was windy, hang on to your hats. Winds will be south 50 to 70 this morning, and we're going to have increasing cloud, good chance of late afternoon showers, and a risk of a thunderstorm in Winnipeg. Our high today is 26 degrees. And now to Heather Wells with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, there are now 3 prospective candidates for leader of Manitoba's PC party. Wally Doddridge, who owns a hotel and ecotourism business in Churchill, is preparing for a run. Fort White MLA Abhi Khan, taxation expert Trevor Sprague are the other prospective candidates. So far, no official candidates, and the deadline to apply for PC leadership is October 15th. Well, the fish are best in the West. The Winnipeg Goldeyes beating Fargo-Moorhead last night 3-1. They now move on to the best of 5 Wolf Cup final against the Kane County Cougars. The first couple games go in Geneva, Illinois, and then the series returns to Winnipeg on Tuesday night. It's been since 2017 since the Fish have made it to the finals. So we'll hear more about that in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's good news. I know they have a lot of dedicated fans, so I suspect some of them will be following this series and maybe even following the team down south. On the program today, we're going to hear more about the Winnipeg Free Press and how they were in hot water after they published a picture of Kathy Merrick after she collapsed. Now, they did apologize, but today we're going to learn more about the specific reasons people were so upset. So we're going to learn more about photography and also Indigenous culture and tradition around burial.
On Cue with Tom Power.
I shunned fame. I just wanted to be like a working actor.
Chloe Sevigny went from it girl in the pages of Sassy magazine to a filmmaker who's known for taking on challenging and groundbreaking roles. Chloe will tell you about seeking out inspiring collaborators, trusting her taste when choosing her projects, and Bonjour Tristesse. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin with 2 stories on the latest high-stakes international push and pull over Russia's war in Ukraine. First to Moscow, where President Vladimir Putin has issued new threats against the West. He says if Ukraine is permitted to use Western long-range weapons to strike deep into Russia, he'll view that as NATO countries joining the war. Crystal Gamansing reports from London.
Russian President Vladimir Putin used his country's state media to fire off a warning to the West. He says if it lifts restrictions on donated long-range missiles, Russia would have to weigh countermeasures for its protection.
It's very difficult what to make of President Putin's words because he is such a liar.
Radoslaw Sikorski is Poland's foreign minister.
He lied that it wasn't his forces that did the Anschluss of Crimea. He lied that he had absolutely no intentions of invading Ukraine. And then he drew these red lines at every stage of our assistance to Ukraine.
The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Washington. He and US President Joe Biden are discussing Ukraine's latest ask of its allies for restrictions on donated weapons to be lifted. Starmer, meanwhile, faces another Russian issue. 6 British diplomats are being expelled from the country, accused of spying and threatening Russian security. Peter Ricketts is the former head of the UK Foreign Office.
Of course, Putin is going to try and intimidate Western politicians and publics from taking this step. This is a trumped-up story to create pressure on the British government.
Russian officials say if more evidence of spying is uncovered, more British diplomats could be expelled. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Next to the United States, Ukraine's biggest supporter in its war efforts.
I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
That ambitious promise came from Donald Trump during this week's presidential debate. Now, his running mate, J.D. Vance, is giving a few details on how he might do that. The CBC's Carolyn Bargut is following the developments. She joins us from our bureau in Washington. Carolyn, what is Vance saying?
So J.D. Vance has outlined part of what he says Donald Trump's plan would be to end the war in Ukraine if he's elected in November. Now, according to Vance, he was on a podcast this week. Now, according to him, he says this plan would include creating a demilitarized zone, which would be heavily fortified so the Russians don't invade again. Now, this is what he says Ukraine and Russia would get in return.
Ukraine remains its independent sovereignty. Russia gets the guarantee of neutrality from Ukraine. It doesn't join NATO. It doesn't join, some of these sort of allied institutions. And I think that's ultimately what this looks like.
In June, Russian President Vladimir Putin had put forward a ceasefire plan that would have required Ukraine to withdraw troops from 4 Russian-occupied territories. The West would have had to lift sanctions that were imposed on Russia, and Ukraine would have had to drop its bid for NATO membership.
So how is Ukraine likely to respond, Caroline?
Not very well. And that's because Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has always said he will not agree to a plan that includes giving up any Ukrainian territory. Now, 2 years ago, he actually presented his own plan to the UN, and that included a complete Russian withdrawal and restoration of pre-2014 borders. Now, that would have meant that Russia would have to give back Crimea and other territory that it claimed in 2014. Russia currently controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory.
Carolyn Bargut in our Washington bureau. Thanks, Carolyn.
Thanks, John.
If you're planning to fly with Air Canada over the next few days, you'd better contact them. The carrier could start announcing flight cancellations today. Canada's biggest airline is locked in a contract dispute with the union representing 5,200 pilots. Both sides are in a position to issue either a strike or lockout notice as early as Sunday. That's when flight cancellations are expected to begin in anticipation of a large service disruption on Wednesday. Air Canada is calling on the federal government to intervene in the dispute. In Montreal, a court hearing will be taking place today for the man accused of planning a terrorism attack on a Jewish center in New York. Mohammed Shahzeb Khan was arrested in Quebec last week, not far from the U.S. border. This week, Ottawa revealed he was in Canada on a student visa. American officials want Canada to extradite him to face charges in the U.S. Alison Northcott has more.
Potentially both countries could charge him for different phases of this criminal conduct that he was allegedly involved in.
Robert Curry is a professor of transnational criminal law at Dalhousie University in Halifax. He says there's a cross-border element to the case against Mohammed Shahzeb Khan because he was arrested in Canada for an attack he was allegedly planning in the States.
Well, we can't exactly try him on this side of the border for some of it, only to extradite him to the other side of the border to be tried again.
U.S. justice officials allege Khan, a Pakistani citizen living in the Toronto area, was planning a large, deadly attack targeting Jewish citizens in New York, attempting to travel from Canada to the U.S. to carry out the violence on October 7th, the anniversary of the Hamas attacks against Israel. The RCMP say Khan was arrested for alleged terror offenses and under the Extradition Act. However, Canada's prosecution service says so far Khan has not been charged in Canada. The U.S. is seeking to have Khan extradited from Canada to face terror charges in the States, with today's court hearing related to that extradition process. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Defense experts say sleeping bags are another sign of Canada's military procurement problems. Millions of dollars were spent on equipping soldiers with the gear. Only one problem, though. Murray Brewster explains.
Shoot when you're ready!
Canadian soldiers and rangers training in the Arctic, a frozen landscape where survival is more than half the battle and where you need to stay warm at all costs. More than 350 soldiers deployed in an exercise in Alberta last November found out the hard way. A leaked document obtained by CBC News shows troops were preparing for deep winter training in Alaska when they discovered the military's new sleeping bags couldn't handle the Canadian winter, despite costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. For their U.S. deployment, it was recommended the troops be issued old 1960s vintage bedrolls.
It's a metaphor of the problems that we're facing.
Rob Hubert is an Arctic defense expert who says he wonders what kind of testing was done before the new bedrolls were purchased. The Defense Department acknowledges the complaints and says it has now begun a new program to buy Arctic sleeping bags, but didn't say when they would be issued to the troops.
We're getting such difficulties and challenges for a no-brainer such as sleeping bags. You know, and you start thinking about the over-the-horizon radars, the F-35s, and presumably the submarines at one point. I mean, it just does not fill one with too much confidence.
The Defense Department also acknowledges the incident last fall wasn't the first time they heard complaints about the new sleeping bags. Another separate unit also said they weren't warm enough. But in that case, the troops were told they didn't use them properly. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
And finally, India's foreign ministry says efforts are underway to have 50 more Indian nationals discharged from the Russian army. Yesterday, Moscow released 45. Russia's accused of falsely inducing them to join the army and then forcing them into active combat in Ukraine. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more from Mumbai.
The joy and relief can't be contained for Naseem Banu Sayed. Somehow our son is coming home, she says. It's been more than 8 months of hell for the family in South India as they waited for word about 24-year-old Mohammed Sufyan, who was tricked into fighting for Russia in the Ukraine war. We'd be crying most days, racked with worry about our child, she says. We could barely eat. Sufyan was working in Dubai, and his parents weren't even aware he was going to Russia. Their son thought he'd be assisting the Russian government, but ended up on the front lines, in the so-called red zone for a few months, barely 2 kilometers from the battlefield, he told his older brother Salman Zahur Sayed.
In their brain, they don't know nothing what we will do, where we will run.
Sayed says his brother saw 25 people die in front of him in an attack. He had to help carry the dead bodies back. Sufyan is one of several Indians forced to fight in the war who were released after diplomatic pressure. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pushed their case when he met with Russia's Vladimir Putin last July. So far, 45 Indian nationals have been repatriated, and 35 of them were discharged from the Russian army after that diplomatic chat, says Randhir Jaiswal, who speaks for India's foreign ministry.
There are 50-odd Indian nationals who are still with the Russian army, for whom we are trying our best to get them discharged as early as possible.
But the nightmare is over for Sufyan and 5 of his fellow soldiers. They're now back on Indian soil. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, Winnipeg, and hello, Manitoba. I switched it around there on you. 6:10 a.m. is the time. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. You're on CBC. Thanks for joining us. So we could see some rain today. Abby will be in a moment to talk all about the forecast and set us up for our Friday. And I do believe it's also a giveaway weekend in the city, so you're going to have to maybe keep that in mind if you're putting some things out on the curb. This hour on the program, are you a traveler with an Air Canada ticket seeking a plan B already because you're worried about a pilot strike? We were just hearing about that on World Report. We're going to talk to a business professor for some options this hour about what you should know if you do have plans to be traveling and you're worried about all of this. So that's coming up at 6:20. In addition, this hour on the program, a WHO report shows a decline in the number of teenagers using condoms. And that includes data from here in Canada. So we're going to look at the difference improving sexual education in schools might make to that number. So stay tuned. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other news and headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, promising MRIs in days, not months. A clinic in Grand Forks recently mailed flyers to Winnipeggers advertising faster access to diagnostic tests. Another North Dakota clinic has ramped up its social media marketing, targeting Canadians. We're going to hear more about all of this coming up. As well, a Winnipeg man says it changed his life. Henry Jardell discovered a free outdoor gym in his community near Churchill High School. He says he started exercising there for an hour a day and lost 15 pounds in 3 months. That gym was set up by the Manitoba Paddling Association and it's been in use since June, but its official opening is today. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And if you want to see some photos of him, go online to our web story, cbc.ca/Manitoba, and check it out. 6:12, Chloe Friesen, good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
And good morning to Abby Adeyemi. Hi.
Good morning.
Guess what we left behind yesterday? We were in Elmo, Transcona. We were at the Elm at 163 Henderson Highway. I just want to thank the cafe again for having us. But Abby, guess what we left behind?
What?
That sign with my face on it that says live on location.
Oh.
So I think somewhere in Winnipeg, someone's having some fun this morning. Like if they took it off
Marcy's
the sidewalk.
here, Marcy's there.
Like I'm at your house. It's in front of your house on the
still
sidewalk.
Here.
I'm just teasing. They pulled it in for us, so big thanks. We'll have to pick that up later today. Speaking of later today, we're expecting some rain, right?
Yeah, we're going to start with a mix of sun and, mix of clouds and sunshine across the province. And then there's going to be this showers and thunderstorms that will be felt across board in most regions. We'll see temperatures ranging from the teens in the northern part of the province to mid-teens down south. But Winnipeg right now, it is 21 degrees. It's clear at the moment. It's a beautiful warm start to Friday. We're going to see a bit of change later in the day. Some clouds will roll in as mentioned. A very good chance of late day showers. Maybe some thunderstorms will be felt in some parts of the city. And of course, a windy one. You think yesterday was breezy. Today will be windy. We're going to get to a high of 26. And that cloudy sky will stay with us into the evening because we're going to see scattered showers here and there. So it's not really one of those days you will be saying, my hair will not get wet. You might get caught just running into one store or the other. So that's what we're going to see for today. And tomorrow, just a sneak peek into tomorrow, we're going to get some sunshine to dry things up. In other regions, we're already seeing light rain in Brandon. Some little showers here and there also felt in Dauphin. And most regions are kind of clear, but we are going to be seeing scattered showers here and there across board. And we will see highs near 25.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
All right, let's ask Chloe how it's going with the commute. And I'm going to guess you have one call?
0 calls. So close.
You
So
had
close.
your notepad. I'm like,
I
someone's
do have
called
my
early.
notepad. It's not because of a call. It's just because of a closure
Okay.
that we are expecting for today and tomorrow. So the northbound and southbound lanes of Lagimodiere Boulevard between Abinogi-Meekina and Capstan Road, they're going to be closed for electrical work today and tomorrow. So, however, northbound it will be open for the morning rush and southbound will be open for the afternoon rush. So you can get through for the morning and the afternoon, but expect delays on Lagimodiere in both directions between Abinogi-Meekina and Capstan Road. And if there is something that is slowing you down this morning, I would love to hear from you on our commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
6:15 a.m. is the time right now on CBC. And speaking of teamwork, Chloe this week was busy in and out working on our remotes. And so you actually did an interview for our program. What was it about?
It's about the U.S. Department of Justice, actually. They unsealed a bombshell indictment just last week. It outlined how Russian state media paid millions of dollars to high-profile American commentators to influence the U.S. election. And while it didn't name the media company it paid, it was clear that the documents matched the description of Tenet Media. It's a subsidiary of a company based in Montreal, actually. And I spoke with CBC Investigative Unit's Aloysius Wong, and he broke down what happened and who was involved.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, Aloysius, what is Tenet Media?
So Tenet Media is a new conservative-leaning media outlet that started pumping out a lot of content last November. It attracted a lot of attention really quickly within right-wing media circles because it associated itself and licensed some big names in that world. Think people like David Rubin and Tim Pool. These are right-wing pundits who have millions of followers on social media, on Twitter, on YouTube, on their podcasts. So right out of their gate, it had access to this really large audience, and on their social media channels, Tenet would share and stream content that would tend to be very right-wing, what you might call MAGA-style conservatism in the U.S. It was typically pro-Trump. It would spread conspiracy theories about the 2020 U.S. election. Its videos spent a lot of time attacking trans people, criticizing immigrants. And you may be unsurprised to learn as well that they tended to have a particular position about the war in Ukraine. For example, here's a recent clip from contributor Tim Pool.
One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine.
So it was a site where, whether knowingly or not, these right-wing commentators took positions that were friendly to the Kremlin's interests.
So who's behind it?
So the company itself, Tenet Media, was founded by Liam Donovan and his wife, a Canadian named Lauren Chen. It's registered in Tennessee, but it's a subsidiary of their Montreal company, Roaming Millennial Inc. But the key figure here really is the wife, Lauren Chen. She was born in Quebec, and she's had a pretty popular right-wing following since at least 2016 when she started gaining an audience for her videos criticizing feminism and the women's rights movement, to the point where before her channel on YouTube was taken down earlier last week, she had more than 500,000 subscribers. But in any case, based on what we can gather from this indictment, U.S. authorities seem to believe that not long after the invasion of Ukraine, Russian operatives began paying Chen and her husband to set up the subsidiary Tenet Media. And we're talking some serious money here. The Department of Justice says that the Russians spent around $10 million to pay these right-wing pundits through Tenet. And in exchange, the Russians expected Tenet Media to spread misinformation about Ukraine and just generally spread pro-Kremlin messages. We should be clear, though, Chen and her husband have not been charged. The indictment only specifically names and calls out the Russian nationals believed to be behind the operation. And we did reach out to Lauren Chen over the phone last week, but she hung up after telling us that she's not commenting at this time.
So what has the fallout been so far for these right-wing creators then?
Right. So for Tenet as a whole, it seems as though it's more or less been shut down. Its YouTube channel has been pulled off its site after the platform said that its content had violated its policies. For Lauren Chen herself, she's been fired for The Blaze, which is another right-wing outlet where she was contributing. And her bio has also disappeared from Turning Point USA, which is a pro-Trump lobby group focused on college campuses in the U.S. So some really big names in conservative politics taking some distance from her. As for the other Tenet Media collaborators, we mentioned Dave Rubin and Tim Pool off the top. They all say that they had no idea where the funding was coming from and that they are the real victims in this alleged scheme, as they're facing more heat right now. But it has been met with some skepticism elsewhere in the right-wing media sphere. There have also been right-wing pundits that have suggested this is all part of a deep state operation and just another way that people are trying to silence conservative voices.
So what would Russia's motivation for funding a conservative political outlet like Tenet Media be?
Right, so U.S. intelligence officials seem to believe that this is only part of a much broader effort and strategy by Russia to influence the outcome of the upcoming U.S. election. And to get a bit more insight of what might be going on behind the scenes, we spoke with Frank Filiucci, who used to lead counterintelligence efforts at the FBI. And he said that the election interference is really only part of the story here.
Here we are talking about the obvious. Yes, they're trying to help Donald Trump. Yes, and you don't have to take that from me. The charging document makes reference to this attempt to get their preferred candidate in an elevated position, and we know who that is. But there's another goal here, which is chaos and discord and dividing society. So a lot of the examples provided have to do with immigration, race, gender, sexuality, all of this, whatever Russia can do to divide Canada, divide the United States, and sow discord, they will do it.
So clearly a very concerted, very deliberate attempt by the Russians here. And Felucci also added that it's also a sign of increasing desperation from Vladimir Putin to undermine the West and to undermine Western support for Ukraine in particular.
So the indictment focused on the impact of the propaganda campaign on the American election, as we just heard, but there's Canadian impacts as well. Can you tell us more?
Right. So even though a lot of Tenet Media's content is focused on the U.S., it has also produced quite a bit of content on Canadian politics, several dozen videos at least, most of which was produced by a British Columbia-based influencer named Lauren Southern. Southern is a well-known figure in far-right circles, both in Canada and abroad. She's helped make certain conspiracy theories, like the Great Replacement theories, more mainstream. And in many of her videos, she'll start with conventional conservative critiques of some liberal policy here in Canada, but then just really ramp up the rhetoric. So just to give you a taste, here's how she started a recent video.
You may have heard something this week about the Online Harms Act. Publicly, they have stated it is for the sake of protecting children online. Very cool, right? No, this is Canada. Nothing good happens here. Of course, this is just more communist garbage.
Southern has said since she's released a statement saying that if these allegations are true, she had no idea. She didn't suspect anything unusual about the company's funding while she was working for them. But it's still likely that this content has had an impact, right? Like we spoke with the former head of CSIS, Richard Fadden, if he thought the kind of content Tenet Media was producing could influence public opinion in Canada. And here's what he had to say.
If somebody's been able to carry on this kind of activity for a certain, reasonable period of time, it must have influence. In particular, because of the problems we have with many people being in echo chambers. You sort of hear something you sort of like, and you organize yourself so that's the only thing you hear. And after a while, it does significantly affect the way you think.
So, of course, it's hard to draw causation between these videos and public opinion. But it may also be worth noting that since the start of the war, a recent poll has shown that the number of Canadians that feel that Canada's doing too much to help Ukraine has doubled to about a quarter of the country.
Now, Aloysius, this is a fascinating story, but it's not over yet. What should we expect to happen next?
Right. So Canadian officials have released a statement basically confirming that they are working closely with their U.S. counterparts on this. So we may or may not see potentially charges involved for the people here in Canada, for example. But that's all left to be seen. But something interesting that counterintelligence experts have told us is that the goal of an investigation like this and going public with it may not necessarily always be to send someone in jail, but sometimes it's also to help disrupt the influence network, right? Like you can see a lot of people are pointing fingers within the right-wing circles these days, and this causes a lot of pain for political adversary, like the Russians in this case, who spent a lot of money to try to disrupt this. I think officials are also hoping that it makes people rethink and think twice before associating too closely with the Kremlin in the future.
Aloysius Wong, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
That is Aloysius Wong, journalist with CBC's investigative unit, in conversation there with Chloe Friesen, obviously, who's on our program today. Chloe and Aloysius spoke earlier this week. If you want to read more about all of the many developments in that story, cbc.ca/. cbc.ca, /Manitoba, because it's on our national site, of course. You can check it out. 6:24 a.m. is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's partly cloudy. It's 21 degrees. Thank you so much for joining us, wherever you're listening from. Well, you might be a little bit worried if you have travel plans coming up. That is because people are scrambling to come up with a plan B ahead of a possible strike by Air Canada pilots. More than 5,000 pilots with the Airline Pilots Association are saying they could issue a strike notice this weekend. So Air Canada says once that happens, it will begin a shutdown of Air Canada and Air Canada Rouge. So what do? Ian Lee's here to talk about it. Professor at Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, and he's in Ottawa. Hi there.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what do? What are your top 3 tips for travelers, I guess, who have tickets to fly right now, like in the next few days?
Right. First off, I respectfully disagree with the National Passenger Rights Ombudsperson who has said to everybody, just sit tight, don't cancel your ticket, just wait until there's a strike, and then you'll get reimbursed if there is one. I just strongly and profoundly disagree. And I'm saying that as somebody who's traveled over 100 times across Pacific and Atlantic Oceans in the last 30 years, teaching across Central and Eastern Europe, Russia, et cetera, and teaching in China since 1997. I've been stranded in airports when something catastrophic has happened. I was in Bucharest, Romania on 9/11, sitting in the bar with some other professors because we just finished teaching, watching CNN Live when the planes flew into the tower. And I told everybody, we're not getting home. They're going to shut everything down. And they did. And I'm not trying to compare this to that situation. My point is, when there's something catastrophic, a strike, a tornado, hurricane, terrorism, the impact on everybody is catastrophic.
So you strongly disagree. I just need to interject here, Ian. You strongly disagree because you're saying if you do wait, there's a chance you could be stranded. So why not take action now? Is that why?
That's exactly my point. Let me make it even more explicit what I'm saying. The change fee is the smallest part of your problem. You've got all the other problems of your booking at the other end where you're flying to, like hotels, car rentals, tickets to concerts. I was in Milan 2 months ago, July 21, Sunday night. EasyJet canceled our flight at 9 o'clock for 6 of us. We had to get to Paris the next morning to fly home to Canada. And we searched 2 hours in the airport for trains, anything that would get us into Paris. Couldn't. Lost our ticket home because the change fee was so enormous, by the way, in that instance. Couldn't get out of Milan. We had to wait and book a hotel, of course. And then we had to get to Rome because it was a hub city. Had to book 2 nights hotel in Rome and then book a ticket home on Transat. So my point is, it's the knock-on effect that you have to worry about. The change fee is the least of your problems. Now, let me say I a little bit agree with him. For those who have a ticket, a really cheap ticket that allows no changes or you lose it, those people should just wait. But many, many Canadians have a ticket that can be changed. Business class tickets, full fare economy, and those people like me that pay a small premium on their economy ticket that gives them the right to change their ticket for free or a modest fee, they should exercise that right, and I don't mean on the day of the strike. Seize your destiny. You have more degrees of freedom 5 days in advance. For example, you can cancel your reservation, your car reservation, your hotels. You can often change them up to 48 hours before.
Got it. So make the decision now, deal with how annoying all of this is, and then get ahead of other disruption if you can. Now, can we talk about the scale of this? I mean, Air Canada is the country's biggest air carrier. What's the scope of disruption that would result if a pilot strike happens?
Well, it's huge. Air Canada is 51% of all the flights in Canada, and that's from the Transport Canada website, excellent data. So they're half of the totality of air passenger travel in Canada. That's how huge they are, and how dominant they are.
And how are other airlines strategizing to accommodate passenger demand in the event of a strike, given that that number is so big?
Yeah, there's not much they can do, because the other air carriers are running at close to full capacity. They're running at 80, 85, 90% load factor. That means there's hardly any unsold tickets. They don't have hundreds or dozens of planes sitting in the parking lot at Pearson that they can press into service. So they're running at close to capacity. They don't have a lot of flex to put more planes in. And so on the day of the strike, there's going to be absolute chaos because people are going to be 51%, all those Air Canada passengers are going to be seeking desperately to fly on another airline or trying to get on a train or trying to book a car. I saw this coming home during the pandemic into Pearson. It was just absolute chaos.
So if you are actually have that point to be made, then it's not just if you have a ticket to be thinking about the potential of this. If you're on another carrier and you're going to be in the airport this weekend, you're going to be affected by this as well.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. It's going to be awful. And so if you can get out of it, if you have flexibility, because it's not urgent, it's just, and now for those who say, look, I've got a wedding to go to or a funeral or an ailing family member, they got to look at alternatives. Drive a car if it's less than a day away. And the other big one that Canadians we're not talking about is many Canadians drive down to the nearest American airport. Ottawa goes down to Ogdensburg 1 hour away. Toronto goes to Buffalo, because there's lots of capacity in the American system, and then fly across the country, the U.S., to the nearest border city at the other end, and then rent a car to drive back up into Canada. There are alternatives, but it won't be using the Canadian air transport system.
Thank you, Ian, for your perspective and point of view today. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
That's Ian Lee, professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. We reached him this morning in Ottawa. I'm guessing if you have travel plans this weekend, we didn't relax your fears about and worries about traveling. But Ian's pointing out some very real things that could be developing. Now, we don't yet know if there will be a strike. To read the latest reporting, please go to our national site, cbc.ca, and World Report has full coverage today as well. And that is coming up. Right now, though, it's time for your local news at 6:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg, and we are starting the day hot out of the gates. It is 21 degrees right now in Winnipeg. It is the last official full weekend of summer, and we're going to see a bit of a change. Still windy, still warm, but increasing clouds today and a really good chance of showers late this afternoon, maybe even a thunderstorm. That wind today gusting south 50 to 70 and a high of 26. Manitobans facing long wait times for MRIs and other diagnostic tests are being lured south of the border. Private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, offering faster access to MRI and CT scans. One of them is Unity Medical Center in Grafton, North Dakota. The clinic, a 2-hour drive from Winnipeg, has ramped up its social media marketing to target clients in Canada. Jess Tankey is the clinic's radiology services supervisor.
They're just coming down because they can't get into Canadian doctors on a timely manner when they're in so much pain. So we can usually get them in within 2 weeks for an MRI at the latest. And then with the other services, we can get them in within the same week, if not the next day.
MRI scans at Unity start at just over $2,000 US. The clinic's CEO says they see 15 to 20 Canadian patients a month. Another clinic in Grand Forks recently mailed flyers to Winnipeg homes advertising MRIs in days. In Manitoba in June, wait times for the province's 14 MRI scanners ranged from 8 weeks to more than 11 months. The Manitoba Tories accuse the NDP of overspending. They based that on a favorable report this spring for Manitoba from the credit rating company S&P Global. But S&P also says the government has cut back on capital spending by 40%, which would amount to more than $1 billion spending cut. Interim PC leader Wayne Iwascu says evidence of that will show when Manitoba Finance starts publishing financial data for the period since the NDP took power.
Mr. Canoe is a benefactor of a stable credit rating, but I think anything moving forward when we get into public accounts coming up here in the next short while, that's all going to be on Wab Canoe and the NDP government.
Finance Minister Adrian Sala says the opposition's claim is a mischaracterization because he says his government is simply not going ahead with all the promises the PCs made before the last provincial election. More than 30,000 workers at Boeing are on strike. They voted overwhelmingly in favor of the action after rejecting the airplane manufacturer's latest contract offer. The walkout, another setback for Boeing. The company faces financial losses as it struggles to repair its reputation after 2 fatal crashes in 2018 and 2019 and a series of other safety issues, including a mid-flight door panel blowout on an Alaskan Airlines plane in January. Well, as you just heard with Marcy right here on Information Radio, if you're planning to fly with Air Canada over the next few days, you better contact the airline. The air carrier could start announcing flight cancellations today. Canada's biggest airline is locked in a contract dispute with the union for 5,200 pilots. Both sides are in a position to issue a strike or lockout notice as early as Sunday. That's when Air Canada flight cancellations are expected to begin, anticipating a large service disruption on Wednesday. Air Canada is calling on the federal government to intervene. You can hear more on this story, as well as other national and international news, coming up on World Report at 7. There is another prospective candidate for leader of Manitoba's Progressive Conservative Party. Wally Doddridge, who owns a hotel and ecotourism business in Churchill, is preparing for a run. Fort White MLA Obby Khan and taxation expert Trevor Sprague are the other prospective candidates. There are no official candidates yet. Brad Zander, who chairs the PC Leadership Committee, says the selection committee says all candidates have to be vetted. That includes a criminal background check, a social media audit, and an interview. Zander says the party wants to make the process transparent.
We've told the candidates that if they do not make it through the vetting process, we'll provide them reasons in writing, and that as far as the committee is concerned, they're free to release that if they want to.
The deadline to apply to run for PC leader is October 15th. A new leader will be chosen in April. A Winnipeg man says he lost 15 pounds in 3 months, thanks in part to a free outdoor gym in his neighborhood. Henry Jardell says he used to weigh 260 pounds, living a sedentary lifestyle. The 60-year-old then discovered an outdoor gym at Arnold Avenue Park near Churchill High School.
I saw those machines sitting outside at the school there in the field, and I was wondering what I had to give my head a shake. I thought, no, this is great. It's like a free gym.
Jardell says he started exercising there for an hour a day and says it changed his life. The outdoor community gym was set up by the Manitoba Paddling Association. It's been in use since the end of June, and its official opening is today. Well, the Fish are off to the finals.
And the Goldeyes are going back to the Miles Wolf Cup Championship Series for the first time since 2017.
The Winnipeg Goldeyes best in the West after beating the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks 3-1 last night. They now head to the best-of-5 Wolf Cup final. Fans want to be part of the action. Karen Zapisaki was quick to get in line for tickets.
Because of the playoff game, we wanted to make sure we grabbed it right away for Tuesday's game here. So we'll see what happens.
The first 2 games of the series against the Kane County Cougars will be played in Geneva, Illinois, before coming back to Winnipeg on Tuesday night. You can find more news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
My favorite thing about Goldeyes fans, and having talked to a lot of them over the years those that are really like into it, are the families that billet players.
Yeah.
Love those stories and relationships. I also love the people that are the stats geeks, because being married to a stats geek myself, Jean-Paul loved baseball when he was a kid. He had notes and numbers. There are people that sit at the Goldeyes game, I know this, and they're all about the stats. And I love that. So they must be so excited that the team's finally going back.
Oh, and it is a great experience. I got to say, I've been to Goldeyes games, and yeah, it's so much fun.
It's just
the food
fun.
is great. The games are great. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, you'll have more opportunity if it's on your bucket list for this, kind of late summer, fall, to head to a game, because they're still in it. It is 6:37 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our awesome team here at the show. Chloe and Kevin and Heather and Abby, who's going to talk to us next about the weather.
Not much of sunshine today. We're going to see lots of clouds, showers, thunderstorms, breezy conditions. It's going to get windy in some areas. We're going to see temperatures ranging from 16 in Churchill to 26 in Winnipeg and Gimli. Winnipeg currently 21 degrees out there. It's going to be a warm start to Friday. A good chance of late day showers and even thunderstorms here and there. Breezy conditions. We get to a high of 26 in Winnipeg for today, and that cloudy conditions will stay with us into the evening. We'll see some scattered showers even into the night period, and some thunderstorms might be felt, and that would ease off by tomorrow morning. Heading west to Brandon, it is 19 at this time. Brandon already getting the thunderstorms and light rain showers as we speak. Today will stay cloudy. More showers will be there off and on. That risk of thunderstorms will stay with folks in Brandon, so take care. It will feel breezy. You're going to get to a high of 23. Thompson is sitting at 14 and mostly cloudy at this time. Expect mainly cloudy skies today. A chance of showers becoming breezy as you get into the afternoon period, and the highs will be reaching 25. Further north in Churchill, it is 11 and cloudy at this time. There's a good chance of showers and some breezy conditions later on. Your highs would only sit at 16. Dauphin is having light rain at this time at 20 degrees. Today's forecast includes more of the cloudy conditions. Scattered showers here and there. Thunderstorms will be felt, followed by a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. High near 24. Gimli is at 20 for the Interlake region today. You see lots of clouds roll in. A good chance of showers in the forecast. Some gusty winds later. You'll get to high of 26. Steinbach at 21, heading to a high of 26. Also, we have a good chance of showers in the forecast there. And for Morris, 20 degrees, cloudy at this time. For the Pembina Valley region, we should be seeing a lot of clouds roll in, a good chance of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon. The winds will become breezy from the southeast, becoming light as you get into late afternoon. The high will only get to 23. So it's just more of like a warm, beautiful start to Friday. We're going to see a bit of change as the clouds roll in, and a very good chance of late afternoon showers in most of the regions, and maybe a thunderstorms you might just roll in if you love the rolling thunderstorms. And we're going to see highs mid-20s.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe Friesen, what should we pass along about the commute?
I've gotten 2 calls on the commuter line before 6:30 a.m., which is a surprise.
This week's been so quiet.
It's been
That's what
so
we're remarking
quiet.
on.
So thank you to the folks that did call. I got a call from Catherine. If you're heading northbound over the Dunkirk Bridge, there's a truck with the hazards on, and there's only one lane in each direction there. So it's blocking the road just after the bridge. It's getting pretty backed up already if you're heading northbound over the Dunkirk Bridge. So watch out for that. Thank you, Catherine, for that call. Also heard from the Cautious Courier, who says Westbrook and Pioneer, a collision has knocked down a traffic standard. So lights at Westbrook and Pioneer are all in a red flash. Treat that as an always stop. There are signal crews on the way, and the light standard is in the intersection, so be really careful as you are approaching that intersection. If there's anything else getting in your way, or if you have updates about either of those situations, you can give us a call at 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Chloe. Well, we are watching to see if Air Canada will start announcing flight cancellations today because of a possible strike or lockout. But another company, meantime, in the air travel business is already on strike. Let's start our business news this morning and our report there. Christely Ramlakan joins us via Zoom. Hi.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So remind us about the other company.
Yeah, so about 33,000 workers at Boeing have started to walk off the job in Seattle, Washington. So they have rejected a proposed 4-year contract with the troubled aircraft manufacturer. And, it's a costly development for the company, which has struggled to ramp up production and restore its reputation following safety issues. And, we've talked a lot about those issues on this report. Now, the strike basically stops commercial plane production at one of America's biggest manufacturing giants and its largest exporter. And the economy could take a hit because of this, as Boeing has nearly 10,000 suppliers across all 50 U.S. states. And the company estimates it contributes about $79 billion to the American economy every single year. And it supports 1.6 million jobs, either directly or indirectly. So this work stoppage could also cause even more problems for airlines who are waiting for planes, including Canadian ones. Now, this tentative deal included a raise of 25% over the life of the contract and better benefits and job security, but 95% of the members voted against the deal. And workers have said the agreement does not cover the increased cost of living. So for Boeing's part, it says it is eager to return to the negotiating table to try to reach a new contract.
To another story this morning, let's move to finance. There's a new report that says the financial health of Canadian credit card holders is getting worse. What can you tell us about the report?
Yeah, well, it says about 57% of credit card customers are now financially unhealthy. And that's up from the 52% that we saw last year. So more people are carrying more debt. And this new study from J.D. Power bases financial health on the ability to meet monthly obligations and how much long-term financial planning a consumer has. So as budgets are squeezed, how much people spend on average every month is on the decline as well. John Cabell is with J.D. Power, and he says, as credit card behavior changes, satisfaction with credit card experiences is changing too.
It's not surprising given the sort of financial pressures that we're seeing concurrently. I mean, those things make complete sense. I think that, but it is, I think, notable just in terms of fundamental cardholder behavior.
And the Canada Credit Card Satisfaction Study also notes that consumers are cashing in their rewards points for things like groceries and essentials instead of travel and entertainment.
Well, if you want to blow your credit card up, you could take a drive to Chicago and you could buy one of what a restaurateur there is now calling the most expensive drink in the United States. What's this story about?
Yes, that is right. So Adelina, that's a bistro led by a Michelin star chef.
Okay.
And Marrow Fine, so that's a jewelry brand with a showroom in the same building. They've teamed up to announce this new Marrow Martini. And this drink comes with a special gift and a hefty $13,000 price tag. So yeah, you would definitely be blowing up your credit card if you went and bought this. And so the drink is a smoked heirloom tomato mezcal martini. That sounds all right. But you might be wondering, well, why is it $13,000? Well, that's because it comes with a 9-carat diamond tennis necklace with 150 diamonds in 14-carat gold. So the new drink was created by the general manager, Colin Hofer, and he was actually also named the Sommelier of the Year by the Michelin Guide in 2022.
I think generally it's just a great opportunity to make an impact on a guest experience. As a general manager and a hospitality person, I'm always looking for ways to make memorable moments for people, and what greater memory can you give to somebody than having them walk away wearing a diamond necklace.
Yeah, I think I'd remember a drink if I walked away with a diamond necklace. But
how much is the drink without the necklace?
You know what? It seems a lot less than $13,000, but still pretty pricey. It's $150.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
It's so strange. The world is upside down.
I know.
Right? What's happening in the markets this morning?
So in Europe, markets are higher after the European Central Bank cut interest rates. So Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are mixed. So Japan is down, Shanghai is down, and Hong Kong is up. Oil is up $1.52 to $54.21 US per barrel. Gold is up $13.90 to $2,571.81 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.06 of a cent to 73.7 cents US.
All right, Crystal Ramlakan, thank you. And next time we see each other, I'll let you buy me a drink. We'll go to Chicago.
Oh, right. Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
I know just the one that I'll be asking for.
Yeah, exactly.
Take care.
Bye.
That's Crystal Ramlakan with our business news on CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. It is right now 6:46 a.m. on 89.3, as mentioned, 21 degrees, or as Abby mentioned in the forecast, we're at 21 degrees. It is raining over in Brandon already, and in Winnipeg we are expecting a chance of showers late this afternoon and a risk of a thunderstorm. So gorgeous sky this morning. I know I say that almost every morning when the shots come up on YouTube of our downtown, but today particularly lovely because you got that sunrise coming up with the orange, kind of pinky orange hue, but it's behind the clouds and that silhouette effect. So just really lovely time of year. Oh, except when you hear the geese and you realize they're leaving and you're like, stay just a little longer. Well, they might want to with daytime highs today of 26 degrees in Winnipeg. Well, next on the show, Gladys Wilson can add gold medal winner to her list of life accomplishments. Gladys Wilson is 86 years old. She lives in Rimbey, Alberta. She's just brought home the gold in the Scrabble competition. She was competing in the 55-plus Canada Games in Quebec City. CBC's Mark Connolly spoke with her and asked what it felt like to win big in Quebec.
Well, it feels really good, but, there's many, many people that could beat me, but they just weren't there.
Well, that's good timing.
Scrabble is kind of fading. There was actually only 6 at the provincials and 6 at the Canada Games. So we got to get more people interested in Scrabble or they won't be having it in the games.
Now, how long have you been playing Scrabble?
About 60 years.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Now, how did you get into it? Who did you play with back in the day?
I played with my neighbor lady. We had 5 acres, and when our husbands were on afternoon shift, we used to go out on our property together, and our children played together, and we played till dark.
Wow.
And that went on many, 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 many years. So that's how I got started.
Why do you love it so much? What do you love about it?
Oh, I just love the competition and be able to improve myself and find the best spot on the board and hit it and make a lot of points. Yes, and the Fellowship of Playing, but nobody will play with me now, really.
And why is that?
Yeah, because I use a lot of those strange words, and they don't like it. And if I have to play if, but, and maybe, I just as soon not play.
You want to do the big words.
Well, yeah, that's the name of the game.
So you're not playing casual games with friends and family, right? It's all business for you?
No. Yeah, I play online. I play about 25 games online every day.
Wow.
Like one play at a time.
What's the key? If someone wanted to be a good Scrabble player, what's the key to the game?
Well, you don't look at your rack. You look at the board and see where the best possible spot to play is and hit your big counting letters on the big counting squares and work them both ways. And then if you have a whole rack of vowels, you just keep an E and throw the rest all back because you're bound to get a couple more back.
No one wants to play poor Gladys Wilson because she is a gold medal winner. She lives in Wimbri, Alberta, south of Edmonton, and conversation there with Mark Connolly from CBC. She just got back from Quebec City. She won gold in Scrabble at the Canada 55+ Games. Now, here in Winnipeg, if you're thinking, I haven't played Scrabble in ages, and maybe you'd like to get back into it, we have an active Winnipeg Scrabble Club, and they just resumed their meetings last week. I was looking at their website. So they started up again after the summer break. So they're playing again. They started September 5th. They meet every Thursday at the Canadian Mennonite University, and you can check out details if you want to play on Facebook.
Poplar River First Nation, let's get to know each other a little bit better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your community September 23rd to 27th. I can't wait to meet you and discover the incredible stories that make Poplar River unique. CBC's Communities in Focus, September 23rd to 27th. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
You're listening to CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you so much for spending time with us in the morning show on your Friday. And we're on air with you till 8:37. If you need us in traffic, by the way, 788-3093 with any commuter updates. Well, a warning, the next conversation we're about to have here on the show may not be appropriate for very young children. Fewer sexually active 15-year-olds, including those in Canada, are using condoms. Now, that is one of the concerning results of a recent report from the World Health Organization. It looked at condom use for teenagers in 42 countries during the 2021-2022 school year. Now, of the teens surveyed here in Canada, around a third said they did not use a condom the last time that they had intercourse. For a look at the health implications for teens, Jessica Wood is with us, Research and Project Development Lead with the Sex Information and Education Council of Canada. Good morning.
Good morning.
What was your reaction to the report?
Well, I wasn't particularly surprised by the findings. We've seen similar patterns of condom use decline in other research and in our studies at CCAN, not only with youth, but adults as well. We've conducted several national studies over the years and noticed that the percentage of people who say they used a condom the last time they had penis-vagina sex has dropped, along with the number of people who say they are concerned about sexually transmitted infections or STIs. Then at the same time, we see rising reported rates of STIs, which are a significant public health issue that can considerably impact people's sexual and reproductive health, especially if they're less untreated. So we want to make sure that youth are equipped to engage in safer sex strategies to prevent and reduce the chance of getting or passing STIs. And condom use is one very important strategy they can use. So for me, the report really highlights the need for young people to have access to comprehensive sexual health education, which we know is effective in building the skills needed to prevent STIs among young people.
Obviously, you've talked about one of the factors in your view why the message may not be getting through to have protected sex, and it may not be getting through to some teens. How big of a piece is as you pointed out, the quality or maybe lack of quality and quantity of sexual education in schools in Canada, in your view?
Now, well, we know that if we want young people to have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to engage in safer sex strategies like using condoms, we need to ensure they have access to high-quality sexual health education. And to do this, we need a collective effort from schools, families, and communities. And schools are an incredibly important avenue for the provision of sexual health education. Our research indicates that young people want to receive sexual health education in schools, and there is significant, variation in the implementation of sexual health education in schools, the quality of sexual health education across the country. And so, and now we're seeing kind of different policies across different parts of Canada that, may create additional barriers to implementation. I think one thing that's very important is that, we know that young people want to receive sex ed in schools. The majority of parents in Canada are supportive of sex ed in schools, and educators are supportive. So we really need to listen, especially to youth, about what they want and ensure that they have access to high-quality sexual health education. Because if we limit access to school-based sex ed, this has significant implications for the sexual health and well-being of young people and public health more broadly, especially when we're talking about STIs, because sexual health education really is an investment in the health and well-being of youth and people in Canada.
So you said, especially when we're talking about STIs, sexually transmitted infections, what are the biggest misconceptions about them?
So I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about STIs that can be addressed through comprehensive sexual health education. I think a lot of people sometimes, don't really know that they are at risk for STIs. When we look at the reasons among youth where they, either use or don't use a condom, some of the reasons that they report are, I don't think I'm at risk for an STI. I'm in a monogamous relationship. And so those kind of speak to these misconceptions that, maybe they don't realize that STIs are often asymptomatic, so that, many of them don't have symptoms. So people might not be aware you can get or pass an STI when there aren't any symptoms present. And they may not realize that, this idea that when you're in a monogamous relationship, there's an assumption that you don't need to be tested for STIs or don't need to continue to use barriers like condoms, but it is possible for someone to begin a relationship, not know they currently have an STI, and then unknowingly pass it to their partner. So it's really important for people to address these misconceptions, but then also talk about the communication, how and when to get tested for STIs, and then having those conversations with your partners. And all of this kind of skill development and information can be addressed in sexual health education, along with, I think one of the most common reasons that young people often report for not using condoms is that they didn't use a condom because they had another method. So STI prevention is not at the top of their mind, and it's so awesome. We've got all of these great contraceptive options for people to choose from. It's also very important that people are informed about whether the contraceptives they're using help to prevent STIs, and if not, that they're given information about how to integrate STI prevention methods into their lives, so using things like condoms and dental dams.
What can parents do to be a helpful part of this conversation around sexual health?
Oh, I think there's a few key things that parents can do. The first is advocate for sexual health education in schools to ensure that not only their children, but that their children's peers, so the ones that their children are interacting with and dating, have access to information about sexual health, safer sex, consent, and communication, so that all of them are having that same information. The second is that parents can inform themselves about where to find credible evidence-based sources of sexual health information to help with their own knowledge and to help provide their children with that information. And the third is to create a safe, open, and shame-free environment for their child to ask questions and communicate with them about sexual health topics, right? Encouraging them to ask you questions and to really come into that conversation with an open mind and open heart so that children and youth feel comfortable discussing those kinds of topics with you.
Multi-layered conversation. Appreciate your interview this morning on the report. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's Jessica Wood. She's Research and Project Development Lead with the Sex Information and Education Council of Canada. We're talking about a new report that is out looking at the decline in the number of teens using condoms. That's a WHO report, but it did also look at teens here in Canada. Let's go to the news headlines now. Heather Wells is in. Hello there.
Hello. Well, private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, promising MRIs in days, not months. A clinic in Grand Forks recently mailed flyers to Winnipeggers advertising faster access to diagnostic tests. Another North Dakota clinic has ramped up its social media marketing, targeting Canadians. We're going to hear from the Canadian Association of Medical Radiation Technologists coming up. And there are now 3 prospective candidates for leader of the Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party. The latest to say he's considering a run is Wally Doddridge. He owns a hotel and ecotourism business in Churchill. Your next Manitoba News coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
21 in Winnipeg, partly cloudy. We're going to have a chance of storms late today, 60% chance of showers and a risk of a thunderstorm. And really windy today, even worse than yesterday, or I guess even more than yesterday. Winds will be southeast 30, gusting to 50, and then gusting to 70 a little bit later this morning as well. So keep that in mind. If you need us on the drive with anything urgent on the commute, 788-3093 is where you can call. Coming up, schools this fall are filling up all around the city. Kids who live outside of catchment are being affected. They before might have been able to get in, But now, one Manitoba mother says she wanted to put her child into a German immersion program, but was denied. It's happening to a lot of families this fall. We're going to get into it through her story. In addition, goats, alpacas, and chickens all ready to greet visitors this weekend. We're going to visit Aurora Farm ahead of their 20th anniversary party, so nice community story. And then after the 7:30 news, we're going to take you to the city of Hamilton because they have some rules there for homeless encampments, and they're looking at some more regulation, and we're going to see if any of what we learned from what they're doing could be applied to help us here in Winnipeg as we work through the challenge.
Today on The Current.
It's our always fascinating listener question show. How close could the moon get?
I'm Duncan McHugh. Bob McDonald is a legend as a science journalist in this country. His path wasn't clear after a difficult childhood, but Bob McDonald says his background wasn't an obstacle to exploring the world through science. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. We begin with two stories on the latest high-stakes international push and pull over Russia's war in Ukraine. First to Moscow, where President Vladimir Putin is issuing new threats against the West. He says if Ukraine is permitted to use Western long-range weapons to strike deep into Russia, he'll view that as NATO countries joining the war. Crystal Gomansing reports from London.
Russian President Vladimir Putin used his country's state media to fire off a warning to the West. He says if it lifts restrictions on donated long-range missiles, Russia would have to weigh countermeasures for its protection.
It's very difficult what to make of President Putin's words because he is such a liar.
Radoslaw Sikorski is Poland's foreign minister.
He lied that it wasn't his forces that did the Anschluss of Crimea. He lied that he had absolutely no intentions of invading Ukraine. And then he drew these red lines at every stage of our assistance to Ukraine.
The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Washington. He and U.S. President Joe Biden are discussing Ukraine's latest ask of its allies for restrictions on donated weapons to be lifted. Starmer, meanwhile, faces another Russian issue. 6 British diplomats are being expelled from the country, accused of spying and threatening Russian security. Peter Ricketts is the former head of the UK Foreign Office.
Of course, Putin is going to try and intimidate Western politicians and publics from taking this step. This is a trumped-up story to create pressure on the British government.
Russian officials say if more evidence of spying is uncovered, more British diplomats could be expelled. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
To the United States now, and Ukraine's biggest supporter in its war efforts.
I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
That ambitious promise came from Donald Trump during this week's presidential debate. Now his running mate, J.D. Vance, is giving a few details about how he might do that. The CBC's Carolyn Bargut is following the development from our bureau in Washington. Carolyn, what is Vance saying?
So J.D. Vance has outlined part of what he says Donald Trump's plan would be to end the war in Ukraine if he's elected in November. Now, according to Vance, he was on a podcast this week. Now, according to him, he says this plan would include creating a demilitarized zone, which would be heavily fortified so the Russians don't invade again. Now, this is what he says Ukraine and Russia would get in return.
Ukraine remains its independent sovereignty. Russia gets the guarantee of neutrality from Ukraine. It doesn't join NATO. It doesn't join, some of these sort of allied institutions. And I think that's ultimately what this looks like.
In June, Russian President Vladimir Putin had put forward a ceasefire plan that would have required Ukraine to withdraw troops from 4 Russian-occupied territories. The West would have had to lift sanctions that were imposed on Russia, and Ukraine would have had to drop its bid for NATO membership.
So how is Ukraine likely to respond, Caroline?
Not very well. And that's because Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has always said he will not agree to a plan that includes giving up any Ukrainian territory. Now, 2 years ago, he actually presented his own plan to the UN, and that included a complete Russian withdrawal and restoration of pre-2014 borders. Now, that would have meant that Russia would have to give back Crimea and other territory that it claimed in 2014. Russia currently controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory.
Carolyn Bargut in our Washington Bureau. Thanks, Carolyn.
Thanks, John.
If you're planning to fly with Air Canada over the next few days, you'd better contact them. The carrier could start announcing flight cancellations today. Canada's biggest airline is locked in a contract dispute with the union representing 5,200 pilots. Both sides are in a position to either issue a strike or lockout notice as early as Sunday. That's when flight cancellations are expected to begin in anticipation of a larger service disruption on Wednesday. Air Canada is calling on the federal government to intervene in the dispute. New Democrats in BC may be having a change of heart about carbon pricing. The province was the first in North America to implement a carbon levy in 2008, but as Premier David Eby prepares to kick off a re-election campaign next week, he seems to have reconsidered. Janice McGregor joins us from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what's going on here?
John, BC was the OG, the originator of a consumer carbon price. And until yesterday, subsequent provincial NDP governments seemed to believe in it too. In fact, last spring, when federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wrote a letter to David Eby asking him not to hike his provincial carbon price to match the annual federal hike, the premier snarked that letter came from Poilievre's, quote, baloney factory. But after months of pounding from both federal and provincial Conservatives, listen to Eby yesterday.
The political consensus that we had in British Columbia has been badly damaged by the approach of the federal government to this issue.
Blaming Ottawa, essentially, for bungling carbon pricing. Eby now says that if re-elected, BC New Democrats would end their consumer carbon tax if, this is a really big if, the federal government removes the legal backstop that requires carbon pricing across Canada. Now, the Trudeau government, despite taking a lot of flack, seems to be standing their ground. But if Canadians, maybe sometime next year, vote in a federal Conservative government, well, you've seen those Axe the Tax t-shirts. Eby may not fancy being the last premier standing with a carbon tax. So now he's attempting to punt what was once a groundbreaking provincial policy out of the fray of his imminent provincial campaign and forward to the next federal one.
And of course, Janice, this move by BC New Democrats follows a similar shift by federal New Democrats.
That's right. Last spring, they voted with Conservatives on a non-binding motion opposing carbon tax increases. And yesterday, Jagmeet Singh was still agreeing that consumer carbon taxes are now unaffordable.
We want to see an approach to fighting the climate crisis where it doesn't put the burden on the backs of working people, where big polluters have to pay their fair share.
Federal Democrats say they'll have some kind of an alternative climate plan, but they haven't released anything yet.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
In Montreal, a court hearing will take place today for the man accused of planning a terror attack on a Jewish center in New York. Mohammed Shahzeb Khan was arrested in Quebec last week, not far from the U.S. border. This week, Ottawa revealed he was in Canada on a student visa. American officials want Canada to extradite him to face charges in the U.S., and Alison Northcott has more.
Potentially both countries could charge him for different phases of this criminal conduct that he was allegedly involved in.
Robert Curry is a professor of transnational criminal law at Dalhousie University in Halifax. He says there's a cross-border element to the case against Mohammed Shahzeb Khan because he was arrested in Canada for an attack he was allegedly planning in the States.
Well, we can't exactly try him on this side of the border for some of it, only to extradite him to the other side of the border to be tried again.
U.S. justice officials allege Khan, a Pakistani citizen living in the Toronto area, was planning a large, deadly attack targeting Jewish citizens in New York, attempting to travel from Canada to the U.S. to carry out the violence on October 7th, the anniversary of the Hamas attacks against Israel. The RCMP say Khan was arrested for alleged terror offenses and under the Extradition Act. However, Canada's prosecution service says so far Khan has not been charged in Canada. The U.S. is seeking to have Khan extradited from Canada to face terror charges in the States, with today's court hearing related to that extradition process. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
And finally, defense experts say sleeping bags are another sign of Canada's military procurement problems. Millions of dollars were spent on equipping soldiers with the gear. Only one problem, though. Murray Brewster explains.
Shoot when you're ready!
Canadian soldiers and rangers training in the Arctic, a frozen landscape where survival is more than half the battle and where you need to stay warm at all costs. More than 350 soldiers deployed in an exercise in Alberta last November found out the hard way. A leaked document obtained by CBC News shows troops were preparing for deep winter training in Alaska when they discovered the military's new sleeping bags couldn't handle the Canadian winter, despite costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. For their U.S. deployment, it was recommended the troops be issued old 1960s vintage bedrolls. The Defense Department acknowledges the complaints and says it has now begun a new program to buy Arctic sleeping bags, but didn't say when they would be issued to the troops. Another separate unit also said they weren't warm enough, but in that case, the troops were told they didn't use them properly. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Well, Winnipeg's a warm spot in the province right now. It's 21 degrees in the city currently. Welcome to CBC's Information Radio for your Friday morning. Thanks for spending some time with us here on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcuso. You might also be listening on 990 AM on the app or watching on YouTube today. If you are, we have these stories coming up. A Manitoba mother says her son has been denied access to a German immersion program, one that his sister is currently enrolled in. We're going to talk to her about the situation and her disappointment as schools are filling up all around the city and kids who live outside of catchment are being affected. In addition, this hour on the show, a Winnipeg farm is celebrating 20 years of animals, gardens, learning and building. Our community reporter visited Aurora Farm for their special anniversary, and we'll tell you what's happening this weekend there to celebrate. And then we continue our discussions about encampments, challenges with homeless encampments, what's happening all across the country to better serve the needs of people, or how can we rather better serve the needs of people with housing? It is one of the questions we're asking, but we're going to take you to Hamilton because they have a model that is interesting around encampments, and we'll find out whether or not it's something that may be useful to us here in Winnipeg. Right now, Heather Wells joins us live from our news department with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitobans facing long wait times for MRIs and other diagnostic tests are being lured south of the border. Private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, offering faster access to MRI and CT scans. One of them, Unity Medical Center in Grafton, North Dakota, is a 2-hour drive from Winnipeg, and it's ramped up its social media marketing to target clients in Canada. We're going to hear more coming up. And a Winnipeg man says it changed his life. Henry Jardell discovered a free outdoor gym in his community near Churchill High School. The 60-year-old says he started exercising there an hour a day, lost 15 pounds in 3 months. That gym has its official opening today. And we'll have more on that as well in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, beautiful day if you're going to be, start to the day, I should say, if you're going to be out doing an early morning workout. Later today, though, you might get wet, right, Abby?
It might get wet, especially this last full weekend of summer. We're going to see a bit of change across the province. Expect a mix of clouds, showers, and thunderstorms with breezy and windy conditions in most of the areas. Temperatures ranging from 16 in Churchill to 26 for Winnipeg and most of the southern region. Winnipeg, we're starting off going to be warm, 21 degrees right now, windy and warm day ahead. Lots of clouds will roll in, a really good chance of scattered showers later in the afternoon, along with a risk of thunderstorm, and we'll see a high of 26. Up north, we're we're just seeing cloudy conditions and a chance of showers. And the thunderstorm in Brandon has actually reduced back to just light rain. That's what we're seeing at this time. And the rest of the southern part of the province, we are seeing just temperatures around the 20s.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe Friesen is back in studio as well and has an update on your commute this morning.
Good morning. Two issues that we are currently keeping an eye on this morning on your commute here in Winnipeg. If you're heading northbound over the Dunkirk Bridge, there could still be a stalled truck with the hazards on, blocking the road just after the bridge. There's only one lane there in each direction over the Dunkirk Bridge. So we heard earlier from Catherine last hour that it was quite backed up. So if you have any updates, if you're heading northbound over the Dunkirk Bridge, I would love to hear from you. We also heard about Westbrook and Pioneer. So in that intersection, there is a collision that happened earlier, knocked down a traffic standard. So the lights, I believe, are still in a red flash. Treat that intersection as an all-way stop. There should be signal crews on the way. If you are at that intersection and you have an update, I would also love to hear more about that. Or if something else is getting in your way this morning, you can let us know by calling our commuter line, 204-788-3093.
7:14 a.m. is the time right now. Well, a mother from Selkirk says that her child, as I mentioned, has been denied access to a school's German immersion program. Her daughter is currently in that program in the River East Transcona School Division. But when it was time for her son to join his sister, they were told that he couldn't. No, because they live outside the school's catchment area. Angela Schellenberg says she's not alone. According to her, many other parents are experiencing the same thing. And according to school divisions that CBC has talked with, there's just more students in the systems and they're having challenges accepting people from outside catchment. But she's in studio, Angela Schellenberg, to tell us what happened with her family story. Good morning.
Hi, thanks so much for having me here this morning.
Thanks for being with us. So how old's your son and why did you want to make sure that he got into this program? Why was that important to you?
So my son is 5 and he's just entering kindergarten now. And we are of German heritage background. And, you know, your language connects you to your roots and your culture. And I wanted to be able to pass that on to my children. It also has a lot of benefits for future academic and professional pursuits. As a healthcare provider, I've had a lot of benefits being able to speak with patients that are German speaking, and particularly being in the Interlake, I've had opportunities to speak with German-speaking patients from the Hutterite communities, and so I found it to be an advantage in my professional life, and because it's part of our culture, I thought it would be a good idea to pass that along.
Are there any other options that you would have in terms of German language programs that are available to you, like that are closer to home and in your catchment?
This particular German bilingual program in the River East Transcona School Division it's the only public school opportunity for children to study in the German bilingual program, where 50% of the class is taught in the German language. There is a Saturday school kind of located more in the downtown area of Winnipeg that is an option as well. So it might be something we need to look into the future.
So I was mentioning that the reason that your son was denied was due to catchment area, from what I understand. But can you tell us a little bit about how far from the school you live that you're applying to, and what the division in the school told you when they turned down, the request to have your son in the program?
Right. I mean, being in Selkirk, we're about a 25-minute drive from the North Kildonan area. So it's a drive that we've been willing to do up until now. And basically we were told that the schools are full. I don't think it's necessarily that the German classrooms themselves are full, but the schools are at capacity. So I can really empathize with the school board and the difficult decisions that they've had to make just because of the increased enrollment. I think there's about 1,000 extra students this year asking for entry. So it's been a difficult situation for everyone.
In your own family, how's it playing out? Because your daughter's in this program and then now your son's not. What are your next steps going to be?
Well, my daughter is adamant that she wants to continue with her friends in her peer group, and she's been reading and writing in the German language, and she wants to continue. And my son is now enrolled in our catchment school in Selkirk, so we have a bit of a challenge trying to get 2 kids to school in 2 different cities, but somehow we're going to manage and figure it out as we go.
Part of the solution could be, as you said, strengthening different bilingual programs. In your case, more German programming around Selkirk to have that offered to students there. But also, it's just this issue with schools being full. It's affecting families all over. What do you hope might change so other students may not be in this position? How could things be improved?
Yeah, I mean, we are concerned about the long-term health and viability of the program. We don't want to lose the German program, and perhaps there was a requirement for some provincial policy to address heritage languages, and perhaps in the future some legislation to protect these heritage languages.
The catchment policies, is how big of a challenge are they? Because from what I understand, and tell me if this is correct, your daughter got in because there wasn't a catchment rule at that time. Is that right?
I just think that she got lucky and there just happened to be space at the time when she was applying at schools of choice. This year, I understand that no out-of-division students are being accepted either in the German or the Ukrainian programs. It's also affected Ukrainian families. It's also affected students who have been in the program for 5-6 years from kindergarten. Now they're transitioning up to the next school level in the middle school and the high school, who are being denied and being asked to go back to their catchment school. So now they're leaving peers that they've studied with for 5-6 years in a language program that they've initiated and being asked to go back to their catchment schools. So it's been a lot of devastation and for families who have been faced with that situation.
And also, I guess, and a lot of logistics to figure out, because how are you going to drive one of your, you said your daughter wants to stay in the division that's 25 minutes away, and your son will be presumably then going locally to school?
Yeah, he's going locally in Selkirk to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to figure out commuting options.
He's on the wait list for pre-post daycare, all these different things, just like a lot of other parents are on wait lists. So we're trying to figure it out.
How do you feel as a parent about all of this sort of the rules around catchment? Because, they're there for a reason. Having said that, if there's exceptions made and when there's space, someone can get in, and then later someone else can't, it really does cause this disruption that we're talking about.
Yeah, and because it's a very unique program, there's an expectation that all families who want access to this program need to live in a single catchment. It's really not feasible anymore. We've been scattered in different areas for employment and other reasons. So,
what have you heard from other parents?
I've heard similar situations of frustration, and people have had a very difficult summer finding out that their children aren't going to be moving on to the next school or entering kindergarten. I just talked to a Ukrainian family. They live on the wrong side of a back lane, which is the boundary of the division. So if their house was on the other side of the back lane, they would be accepted. So a lot of frustration based off of pure address alone for these unique programming.
We should read for the listeners here, the River East School Division, Transcona School Division, we did contact them. So in their email to us around the situation, they said, reiterating some of the things we've already shared, but, quote, River East Transcona School Division is experiencing unprecedented enrollment growth, resulting in limited or no capacity in many of the schools, and you were saying that. This affects, the statement says, all programs and programming within the division. We've been unable to accept most out-of-division schools of choice applications. Any out-of-division families seeking access to RETSD schools can be assured they will find excellent educational opportunities in their home school divisions, end quote. And the statement actually did go on to talk about the situation because of a lot of newcomer students coming in, and they also have the Ukrainian program, as you're saying, in that division. What do you think of their response? Would you like them to be moving to solutions, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Premier's view on heritage programs is that we know that these language programs positively contribute to diverse heritage and cultures that make up our province, and we don't all live in one specific catchment. So maybe we need to take another look at how we provide access to these programs for people from out of catchment who want access to language learning. What are your next steps? Do you have plans to for a call for action here or on this? Well, I think parents will need to come together and advocate for these programs as the year progresses, and we'll see what we can do in the future. Thank you very much for coming in, Angela. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I forgot to ask you about? No, I'm very, very happy for this opportunity. Thanks so much. You're more than welcome. Thank you for being here on CBC. Angela Schellenberg is a mother of two who lives in Selkirk, and she's experienced something that maybe your family is as well. She has her daughter in a bilingual program in a catchment area that's outside of where she lives, but her son was denied. Schools are full. So if you want to weigh in on this, if you're experiencing this as well, 788-3205 if you want to share your story. And as I mentioned, I had read within the body of the interview the emailed response from the River East School Division Superintendent. Once again, if you want to weigh in, 788-3205.
Hi, I'm Saroja Coelho, host of the Saturday afternoon call-in show Just Asking, now expanding to 2 hours.
And I'm Ian Hannah-Mansing, host of the Sunday afternoon call-in show Cross Country Checkup.
Whether it's world events
or what's happening in your backyard,
every weekend we connect Canada live.
That's Just Asking with Saroja Coelho, Saturday afternoons at 4 Eastern.
And Cross Country Checkup with Ian Hannah-Mansing, Sunday afternoons at 4 Eastern on CBC Radio 1.
7:22 a.m. is the time right now, and it is in Winnipeg right now calm, although it's going to be very windy throughout today. It is still raining in Brandon. It's 19 degrees there right now. And we have morning sports coming up. We're continuing to celebrate the Goldeyes, who last night got into the championship final series. They haven't been in it since 2017, so good for the fish. Well, next on the program, orange with Manitoba bison depicted, blue and white background with a polar bear in front, or green with northern lights. I'm describing 3 possible designs that you will see on the new plastic Manitoba health cards. These designs have been put out there right now and floated by Premier Wab Kinew, and he's got it out on social media. He's asking people in Manitoba to weigh in, and vote for their favorite design. CBC's Ian Fraze went out to see what people think of the designs, and here's what Aaron Burnett had to say.
Okay, the first one, this kind of looks like our driver's license, current driver's license. Oh, I like option 2.
How come?
I'm prone to polar bears. I think the polar bear and the blue, it's just Churchill, it's Manitoba. It's such a Manitoba iconic symbol, so yeah.
So would you like to carry that around?
Oh, you bet I would.
How does your paper card look right now?
Tattered and worn. Yeah, no, it's not in great shape.
So it's your choice of the design that you are going to choose. And that was Ian Fraze out talking to someone about their choice. But if you want to go to our website and see the designs, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Would love to hear what you're thinking around this. You can always weigh into the show. Abby, you are choosing?
Those that know me already know I'm going green.
Yeah, you're going with the Northern Lights.
The Northern Lights.
Yeah. Now that's just because you love Northern Lights.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a surprise, and this is a personal choice. We're not trying to sway anybody anyway. I actually am choosing the one that looks the most medical. So that's the one that actually has the bison on it, and the font and the color of the way the top of that card kind of matches my other medical documents that are in my wallet. And the reason for that is because I feel like when I go into my wallet, while the polar bear might be cute or the top of the Northern Lights might be pretty, I want to find it as a piece of medical documentation, and that one just reminded me the most of the other things I have. So weigh in. Which of these medical cards do you like the best? 788-3205. You want to let us know. But more importantly, the province wants your feedback. So check out the story and the links at cbc.ca/Manitoba. It is time for morning sports, and that means that Scott Reguer is joining us now. Good morning to you, Scott Reguer.
Happy Friday the 13th.
No doubt. But not bad news or anything scary about today for Winnipeg's baseball team, right? Right news today.
Yeah, true enough. The Goldeyes headed to their... It's pretty loud last night at Blue Cross Park. The Goldeyes headed to their league's championship series. Marcy, they did it on the back of a win last night over the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks. A tight game, a pitcher's duel, won in the end 3-1 by the Goldeyes. Winnipeg starter Mitchell Lamson, outstanding. He went 7 innings. He only allowed 3 hits while striking out 11. So they'll hope for a similar performance when they begin the American Association Championship Series tomorrow. Winnipeg facing the Kane County Cougars in Illinois as the Wolf Cup final gets underway. The Goldeyes, Marcy, seeking a 5th championship in club history, but the first since 2017.
All right, cool. Let's go to tennis, where Canada is having success on actually a couple of fronts, right?
Yeah, including in Mexico.
A monumental upset in Guadalajara, delivered by Marina Starkusic, who registers the biggest win of her career.
Marina Starkusic books her spot in the quarterfinals of the Guadalajara Open. which she did by beating the tournament's top seed, the world number 12, Yelena Ostapenko. The Toronto teenager Stakusic, Marcy, didn't make it easy on herself. She had to come back from a 4-0 deficit in the final set. And as you heard, it was the biggest win of her career. And that's saying something because, as some of our listeners will remember, Stakusic was right at the heart of Canada's first ever Billie Jean King Cup winning team. That is the premier international team competition in women's tennis. As for the men, that would be the Davis Cup, and Canada's having success there as well, led by Denis Shapovalov. The Canadians shut out Finland yesterday in Manchester, earning a spot in the Davis Cup finals. So those are going to involve the top 8 countries in the world. They'll take place in Malaga, Spain later this fall, and it sounds like Shapovalov's all ready to get going.
It would be pretty special. Last time I was there, it was the first time in history we won Davis Cup, so definitely amazing feelings to go back there, and would definitely mean a lot to all of us.
I could think of worse vacations, Marcy, than heading to Malaga on the Costa del Sol and cheering them on in November. That sounds like a good assignment, actually. Good luck with that.
I don't think you're going to get that approved. I'm just putting it out
Dare
there.
to dream.
Back to baseball. A top prospect for the Minnesota Twins is coming under scrutiny right now.
Yeah, we're talking about catching prospect Derek Bender, Marcy. He has been released by the Twins organization after being accused of tipping pitches. Last week, while playing for the Twins' single-A affiliate, Bender reportedly was telling opposing batters what kind of pitch to expect next. His team, the Fort Myers Mighty Muscles, ended up losing and getting eliminated from the playoffs, and now Bender has lost his job, although reportedly gets to keep his $300,000 Major League signing bonus. Still, his decision to essentially sabotage his baseball career has social media buzzing over possible rationales. Here are a couple of comments I found on Reddit this morning. Unless it's gambling, this is bizarre. Another person writes, the only way this makes sense is if he secretly hates baseball and wanted to give himself a black mark so nobody would pressure him to going pro ever again. And finally, Marcy, dude watched Bull Durham too many times. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the classic baseball movie, there's definitely a comparison to be made. Remember this?
God, the sucker teed off on that like he knew I was going to throw a fastball. He did know. How? I told him.
Kevin Costner's crusty old minor league catcher sabotages Tim Robbins' character, a cocky, flame-throwing rookie pitcher. So was Bender, Marcy, simply trying to undermine his own pitcher, Ross Dunn? Time, hopefully, will tell us.
Wow, unless he gives us an interview. How bizarre. All right,
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, it totally is. Have a great weekend, Scott. Thank you.
You bet. You too.
That is Scott Rick with Morning Sports. Still ahead, we've been covering a series of stories about encampments this week, homeless encampments. And earlier this week on the show, an Osborne Village resident spoke with us. She's concerned about encampments. Here's some of what she said.
Other cities have these issues. We're not so unique. What are they doing to help with this?
We'll find out after the 7:30 news when we take you to Hamilton to talk about encampments. Right now, though, your news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is oddly warm to start Friday the 13th in Winnipeg. We're at 21 right now. We're headed to a high of 26. That wind is going to pick up south 50, gusting to 70 this morning. And then we're going to see a good chance of late day showers, maybe even a thunderstorm today. Private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, promising MRIs in days, not months. A clinic in Grand Forks recently mailed flyers to Winnipeggers advertising faster access to diagnostic tests. Another North Dakota clinic has ramped up its social media marketing to target Canadians. As of June, wait times for Manitoba's 14 MRI scanners range from 8 weeks to 11 months. Dana McTaggart is with the Canadian Association of Medical Radiation Technologists. She says having some patients seek private services south of the border frees up space in the public queue in Manitoba. At the same time, she says it shouldn't be necessary.
We should have the means in our province to image the patients we have. And so I think that this situation where the United States may be capitalizing or marketing this to Canadian patients just further emphasizes the overall shortages within the healthcare system.
The CBC has reached out to the provincial government for comment. The Manitoba Tories say the NDP are quietly making cuts to make ends meet after going on a spending spree. They base that on a favorable report this spring for Manitoba from credit rating company S&P Global. But S&P also say the government has cut back on capital spending by 40%, which would amount to a more than $1 billion spending cut. Finance Minister Adrian Salas says the opposition's claim is a mischaracterization because he says his government is simply not going ahead with all the promises the PCs made before the last provincial election.
A lot of the announcements that they made in hopes of staying in government really led Manitobans on, but they weren't planned for, and they had absolutely no plan to pay for them.
Salas stresses he intends to balance the provincial budget during the final year of the NDP government's first term. If you are planning to fly Air Canada over the next few days, you need to contact the airline. Air Canada could start announcing plans for flight cancellations as early as today. It's in a contract dispute with its 5,200 pilots, and both sides are in a position to issue a strike or lockout notice as early as Sunday. That's when flight cancellations could begin in anticipation of a service disruption on Wednesday. Air Canada is calling on the federal government to intervene. Now to Moscow. The Russian Federal Security Service announcing it's expelling 6 British diplomats. The FSB accuses them of espionage and sabotage related to the war in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin says if Ukraine continues to strike into Russia, it would be viewed as a NATO-led escalation of the war. You can hear more on that story and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. There are now 3 prospective candidates for leader of the Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party. Wally Doddridge, who owns a hotel and ecotourism business in Churchill, is preparing for a run. Fort White MLA Abby Khan and taxation expert Trevor Sprague are the other prospective candidates. There are no official candidates just yet. Brad Zander chairs the PC Leadership Committee, Selection Committee, and says all these candidates are going to have to be vetted, including a criminal background check, a social media audit, and an interview. Zander says the party wants to know how the candidates convey their views.
Are you doing it in a way that demonstrates good judgment? Are you getting into Twitter fights with teenagers at 2 a.m?
The deadline to apply to become leader or to run for the leader of the PC party is October 15th, and a new leader will be chosen in April. A Winnipeg man says a free outdoor gym in his neighborhood helped him lose 15 pounds in 3 months. Henry Jardell weighed up to 260 pounds. While out walking in June, he discovered the outdoor gym near Churchill High School. Jardell says he started working out there for almost an hour every day.
Changed my life. I used to sit around at home and do nothing, basically, just watch TV and this has gotten me like physically active and starting to get healthy again.
The free community gym was set up by the Manitoba Paddling Association with funding from the province. The gym has been in use since the end of June, but its official opening is today. They are the best in the West.
And the Goldeyes are going back to the Miles Wolf Cup Championship Series for the first time since 2017.
The Winnipeg Goldeyes beating Fargo Moorhead 3-1, heading to the best of 5 Wolf Cup final. Fans last night could not be happier. Rob Barnsley says the atmosphere at Blue Cross Park was amazing.
I've been in many provinces, many states. This crowd is great. I hope everybody comes out for the final, packs this place. It's a great alternative for friends and family to get together.
It's off to Geneva, Illinois now for the first 2 games against the Kane County Cougars starting Saturday. The series comes back to Winnipeg Tuesday night. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm looking ahead to Tuesday. We could have showers that day, but that's far enough away. Won't worry about it. Let's get into today and the weekend first, shall we? It's time for the regional forecast. You can hear Abby here. Hi.
A warm start to the weekend. Hi, Marcy. 21 still in Winnipeg. We're going to see clouds roll in, aiming for a high of 26. There's a good chance of late day showers and thunderstorms in the city, and then tonight that cloudy condition is going to stay with us and will cool down to 14. Though for tomorrow, we're going to get a sunny day. Brandon is sitting at 18, still seeing that light shower this time. Today will be mostly cloudy, a chance of scattered showers here and there. Some breezy conditions will come with that. Expect a high of 23. Moving north to Thompson, where it is 14 degrees and mainly cloudy at this time. A chance of showers and breezy conditions in the forecast. Highs will reach 25. Churchill. Good morning. You are at 11 degrees. Cloudy conditions you would get today. A good chance of showers and a breezy condition to come with that. That's what's expected. A high of 16. Dauphin at 18 at this time. Cloudy conditions also in the forecast. Morning showers here and there. Breezy conditions, high 24. Gimli at 20 and clear at this time. The Interlake region will see some cloudy conditions roll in and you'd get to a high of 26. It is cloudy in Steinbach at 20 degrees. We're heading to a high of 26. And Morris is cloudy at 20, heading to a high of 23. So there you go. We're looking at a mix of cloud conditions, showers here and there, and some thunderstorms will be felt also in the forecast. With that, we can't miss the breezy conditions. It's going to be a lot felt today. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at 21, heading to a high of 26.
I always say hang on to your small dogs.
Yeah, the small dogs.
All right, let's get into what's happening in the morning commute. Chloe Friesen's back in studio. Hello again.
Good morning. I have some good news. Westbrook and Pioneer, the lights have been restored. Southbound has one indication, so one of those light standers up until the other one is replaced until final repairs are made. So still use caution while you are traveling through Westbrook and Pioneer, but things have been cleared and that one light standard has been removed from the roadway, so good news there. We could still be looking at a stall just over the Dunkirk Bridge if you're heading northbound. We heard earlier in the show that there was a truck with hazards on that was really slowing things down in that area. So if you're heading northbound and you're just around the Dunkirk Bridge, I would love to hear from you. You can give us an update. And then lastly, the northbound and southbound lanes of Lashmodiere Boulevard between Abino-Jimikina and Capstan Road are going to be closed today and tomorrow for electrical work, but northbound is open this morning for the rush hour, and southbound is going to be open for the afternoon rush. So you're going to have to kind of time that commute correctly. So expect delays northbound to southbound Lashmodiere between Abino-Jimikina and Capstan Road. If there's anything you'd like to add to that list or you have any updates, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Chloe. It is at 21 minutes to 8 o'clock on your Friday morning, Friday the 13th. Do people still get superstitious? I don't know. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at CBC's Information Radio. Well, next on the show, it is located on a 160-acre parcel of land in South Winnipeg. And this weekend, Aurora Farm is going to celebrate its 20th anniversary with a big fuzzy party. Activities include a scavenger hunt, seeding tree plants, makers market, and of course, some quality time with the residents. CBC's Manitoba's community reporter was recently at Aurora Farm where she got a tour from owner Louise May.
This is my home. This is my farm. We've called it Aurora Farm. We've been here for 20 years, and that's why we're celebrating. We know what people love doing when they're here, so we've kind of tried to amplify all of those things. We're setting up a bunch of different stations for people to do some activities. We've got some prizes for a scavenger hunt. We're doing seed saving, tree planting. Of course, everybody always wants to come and spend quality time with the animals, so we've got them set up so that there's more interaction ability. We're having a little market in the yard, so it'll just be a little sweet time for us.
So, Louise, we're in the barn right now, and there's lots of animals, there's goats, and there's horses, and I understand this is Cherry.
She is one of the reasons we moved here. She is exactly 20 years old and a couple months. She was born in the spring of that year when I was deciding we needed to move on and get ourselves our own place, and so she's my indicator that I remember how many years I've been here. Our main product is goat milk soap. So we have a herd of dairy goats and we milk them by hand every day, and that's what we make our beautiful soap with. But also when you have goat milk, you have babies. And the babies have proven for the last 7 years to be fabulous yoga participants.
You are giving somebody a treat. What's going on?
Well, these are our female alpacas, our little herd of female alpacas. This is Monarch. And she usually loves hanging out when we have oats right away. She's very friendly. So they come in when we do baby goat yoga as well as the baby goats. And so they are very comfortable with people. So she was born here. So all of the alpacas here that we have today in this room were all born here at the farms. Now I have a nice little stable herd, and I'm not breeding anymore. But it's been absolutely delightful to raise a herd and have them for their fleece. And then we process their fleece to be yarns, and then I love knitting and crocheting and weaving. There was really not much here other than the house and the barn and the crop and a few bigger trees. So really it was a beautiful blank canvas for me to think about and practice and design and draw and conceptualize how I would like to see it move forward. Now it's, very lively, a lot of gardens, a lot of new ecosystem, a lot of trees.
And we have a special little area. It's kind of like a little ecosystem. There's solar panels. Tell me what you've built here.
Over the years, I've put solar panels in, and now the farm is almost all powered by solar energy. So what you're seeing behind us is some of the solar panels. The rest are on the larger building. Also, the rainwater collection is important to us. Some bigger pieces of that picture also like large-scale composting of all the waste from the animals, and then ecosystem development. So behind us over here, we have a whole dugout that I had built and a wetland, hugely full of birds and everything.
Kind of like a little marsh or like a pond.
Yeah. It's got a dugout and a marsh in it.
So, Louise, we are in this beautiful garden right now.
This is the garden we call the fireweed garden because it's our main production garden for medicinal herbs, culinary herbs, edible flowers, which we sell through Fireweed Food Hub. And it's just one of the gardens that are here at Aurora Farm.
And growing right here behind you is tobacco.
Yeah, for sure. So tobacco as a ceremonial plant for Indigenous culture, of course, we know that, but it's also a natural pesticide. So we've got a fence, basically a fence of tobacco that makes it so that the bugs don't come into this garden.
And you're launching some teas this weekend.
Yeah, this garden has been my main place to grow tea herbs that we wouldn't usually have grown. So we've got bergamot and yarrow and borage, lemon verbena, blue vervain, all of those kind of plants that we often find in teas. And what I've done is I've blended a few different kinds and am launching them this weekend. So we'll have testing. You'll be able to taste test all the teas. And then come and see the plants where they come from. This is Heather. She is known by many, many people in Winnipeg, especially young people. So we've been running a summer youth horse farm camp for about 15 years, and she is one of the favorites for young people to ride and learn, have their first experiences on horses. She's a dear, dear friend. I was an animal person. I was a gardener before I got here, but not anywhere near at this scale. And so the amount of learning that I have done both formally and informally, and then I realized that I had something to share and that a lot of people really wanted these kind of more practical, conceptual things, but that led themselves to living a better way, living a better life. Coming up to a big anniversary like this, it makes you reflect a lot, and it also makes you reflect at my age of what I want the next 20 years to look like. This farm is one of the last Métis farmsteads, so it's 2 miles long. I want to make a tree line all the way down, and that means probably putting about 30,000 trees in. So in terms of climate change, I really believe that one of the best things we can do is plant more trees everywhere, and I'm a very firm urban tree advocate. So I'm excited to keep planting trees. I've got about 1,000 in. I'm going to try to put another 1,000 in this weekend. And then I'm working on this winter a larger program that looks at all aspects of food security and everything that we're doing here to make a more focused apprenticeship model and to train people at a higher level to be able to feel confident to go out and do this kind of work.
That's my favorite sound. I don't know if that animal's happy or annoyed. That was CBC Manitoba's community reporter, Shanley Vidal, out at Aurora Farm. And you had a treat if you were watching that story on our CBC Manitoba YouTube page with all the cute animals. The 20th anniversary celebration they were talking about is this weekend if you want to go, tomorrow and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day.
The CBC Music Top 20. CBC Music Live.
All right.
Savor the flavor of the Francophone world on C'est Formidable. Experience the next wave of Indigenous music with Reclaim. The global sounds of frequencies. End your day or start your late night with music on CBC Radio 1. Weeknights at 11, 11:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
How's your Friday going, everyone? 7:46 a.m. It is September 13th, school day number 3 on the cycle, by the way. And today in Winnipeg, it's going to be hot this afternoon, though very windy and potentially rainy as well. Our high is 26. We have we have a good chance of a risk of a thunderstorm late in the day. And then our winds are going to be gusting up to 70 this morning. So it doesn't look like we're quite that windy yet in downtown Winnipeg. I'm just seeing winds around southeast at 31 at the airport, pardon me. Well, next to the show, we have a bit of music, and this is new music from Tatasqueya Cree Nation Sebastian Gaskin this morning. It's actually a love song that was originally written to be a Valentine gift from the pop artist. It's called Cherie Amour. New music from Sebastian Gaskin from Tatasqueya Cree Nation. That tune is called Cherie Amour. I was singing along with Stevie Wonder. I think they should mash those tunes up, right? It is, as mentioned, ahead of 8 o'clock, now 9 minutes to 8 o'clock. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. And thank you for joining us this Friday morning. Hopefully you had a great week. Big thanks. Just want to thank the people that were who owned the site of our community studio yesterday. I like to call them community studios. We were broadcasting in advance of the Elmwood Transcona by-election at the Elm Pizzeria Cafe Restaurant. They put in a great El Salvadorian breakfast. And so we just love being out there. That's at 163 Henderson. So, and thanks to all the voters as well that came out and shared their points of view with us ahead of the by-election. So that's coming up on Monday. It is 9 minutes to 8. Also Monday, I want to mention that I will not be here on the program. That is because I'm going to be teaching at Sisler. So I help out with a course there for some of their students for one of their programs around interviewing. So I'm looking forward to that on Monday morning. And then one last thing that I want to invite you to is our call-in this afternoon on noon. So between between 12:30 and 1 today, we're going to be talking about some of the fabulous things that you found at Giveaway Weekend, or what you've put out. And if you don't do Giveaway Weekend, which is this weekend, by the way, maybe it's garage sale finds or thrift store finds. So we're going to have lots of fun. Mike Ewan's going to be coming in, very Friday conversation. Mike, forevermore, been involved in our community with antiques and collectibles. So that's on Radio Noon between 12:30 and 1.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Well, full disclosure here, we were hoping to have a conversation about homeless encampments in other cities and the different things that are happening that are solutions moving forward that are innovative. And we were expecting to go to the city of Hamilton. We're just having a challenge reaching our guest this morning. So we'll stay on top of that story, of course, but we'll have to have that on another program here on CBC. What we do have for you next on the show is a story that is also not in Manitoba, but maybe something we want to emulate. Just a few floors above the intensive care unit at the Royal University Hospital over in Saskatoon, there's a bit of a curious sight. So up on the roof, there are 25 black tubes with dozens of holes in them. They have these wide bases to keep them upright. And growing out of the holes is a cornucopia of fresh-grown greens. CBC's Chelsea Cross went up to find out more about this unconventional rooftop garden.
Hi, my name's Melanie Merrick, and I'm a food service worker here at RUH Saskatoon. And I am involved in this beautiful garden rooftop with our towers this year, enjoying harvesting up here. So this one that I'm harvesting right now, this is our speckled lettuce. It's really quite pretty. I don't know how to describe it. It's so colorful, kind of like fireworks between the two of them. So they look really nice in a mixed green salad that you can get downstairs at the deli here in our cafeteria. Hopefully we'll be having some of this for our patient side. This has kind of been an interesting project of taking it straight off the roof and straight downstairs. It's as fresh as it can be. Our system is a water style system. So the noise that you heard is the pumps turning on. And what it does, it circulates the water in these towers that have all the vegetables growing in them. So one of the jobs between a few of us downstairs, we come up and check the towers, make sure they're running properly, make sure our lovely Saskatchewan wind hasn't knocked one over. So they're looking healthy and nice right now. We'll probably be doing a big harvest shortly and calling it quits for the season, unfortunately, but it's been a beautiful rooftop garden.
Hi, my name is Vanessa McCubbing. I work at the SHA, and my involvement with the project is I helped set it up. These towers, they're aeroponic towers. They are also fairly sustainable in that they recycle the water in the base of the tower. And so on average, a typical head of lettuce utilizes about 60 liters of water. These towers have it so it's 3 liters. So there's a 95% reduction in the amount of water used. And that also helps with kind of our goals for sustainability. Hydroponics is when the roots are in water all the time, a nutrient solution. Aeroponic, they actually cycle the water, and so it's mostly exposed to oxygen, air, and with intermediate doses of natural mineral nutrient solution.
A lot of little tomatoes hiding out underneath here, so we're just watching on them and waiting. our supervisor asked if there was anyone who wanted to volunteer in the garden project. And I love gardening at home. I find it relaxing and enjoyable. I was just curious as to how towers would work and what types of things they could bring in and grow here in Saskatoon. So I was one of the first ones to volunteer, and we've all kind of been tending the garden. Yeah.
What all are you growing here?
A lot of lettuce, which is what we use in our deli here for our mixed green salads. We also have herbs that we're growing, fresh tomatoes that we're trialing this year that you'll see shortly because they're starting to turn. We come up and we harvest, and we look at our menu options that we're serving in the cafeteria for today as well as tomorrow, and we come up and harvest the things that would go along with those menu items. We pick as much as we can, take it downstairs, wash it thoroughly, and spin dry the lettuce, and then we take it to our deli. I really hope that our patients get to have this lovely product. We have patients that have eating disorders. We have other patients here who they can't have the chemicals.
So lots of things to think about when you are talking about a rooftop garden at a hospital. That was CBC's Chelsea Cross bringing us a story from the Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon. It is 2 minutes to 8 now. Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Manitobans facing long wait times for MRIs and other diagnostic tests are being lured south of the border. Private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, offering faster access to MRI and CT scans. And then there were three prospective candidates for leader of the Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party. Wally Doddridge, who owns a hotel and ecotourism in Churchill, is preparing for a run. Fort White MLA Aubie Kahn and taxation expert Trevor Sprague are the other prospective candidates. The deadline to apply for leader is October 15th, and the next leader of the PCs will be chosen in April. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
21 degrees in Winnipeg. It's calm. Our high is 26, and the commute's moving fine. World Report's next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
I shunned fame. I just wanted to be like a working actor.
Chloe Sevigny went from it girl in the pages of Sassy magazine to a filmmaker who's known for taking on challenging and groundbreaking roles. Chloe will tell you about seeking out inspiring collaborators, trusting her taste when choosing her projects, and Bonjour Tristesse. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Duncan McHugh. Bob McDonald is a legend as a science journalist in this country. His path wasn't clear after a difficult childhood, but Bob McDonald says his background wasn't an obstacle to exploring the world through science. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. If you're traveling on Air Canada this weekend, you will want to prepare a contingency plan. That's the message this Friday, with a critical deadline just 2 days away. The country's largest air carrier is locked in a contract dispute with its pilots. By Sunday, both sides will be in a position to issue either a lockout or strike notice. You could see flight cancellations as early as today. Air Canada tells CBC News it will notify customers whose flights are affected. The CBC's Linda Ward is following all of this and joins us in studio. Linda, what are we expecting to hear today?
Well, John, we're expecting to hear about some cancellations, particularly when it comes to holiday packages and services like cargo. Air Canada looking to suspend some operations ahead of that strike deadline to get ahead of things and avoid leaving passengers potentially stranded. The union will issue a 72-hour strike notice on Sunday unless a deal is reached. Now, if there's no deal, they'll start a 3-day wind-down plan with a full shutdown that could happen on Wednesday. If this goes ahead, Air Canada says the travel plans of about 110,000 travelers a day will be affected. And, of course, there'll be delays to cargo shipments as well.
So, Linda, with the clock ticking, where are those talks? Where do they stand between Air Canada and the pilots union?
So just this morning, the Airline Pilots Association sent us a statement saying that they continue to meet with Air Canada today to reach a new contract at the negotiating table and avoid this strike. The Federal Labour Minister, Stephen McKinnon, is on social media saying he's meeting with both sides at the bargaining table, supported by federal mediators, and that's where they need to stay, he says, to get a deal done. Air Canada says a tentative agreement has been reached on about 70% of all items at the table, but the union is asking too much in terms of compensation. The union says it's corporate greed holding up the talks, and Air Canada is raking in record profits and not paying pilots what they deserve. And Christopher Hennebel, Air Canada's Vice President of Corporate Communications, is calling for the government to step in.
If no deal can be reached by Saturday evening, we would need the government to intervene to avoid a major disruption for Canadians.
Now, not right away. They're saying they'd like binding arbitration only if negotiations fail. They say recent federal intervention and other transport-related labor disruptions, like rail, for instance, set a precedent for this. The union has already opened a strike headquarters in Toronto, and travelers are really watching their travel plans hang in the balance and waiting for answers.
Linda Ward joining us in studio. Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
In Montreal, a court hearing is due to take place this hour for the man accused of planning a terrorist attack on a Jewish center in New York. Mohammed Shahzab Khan was arrested in Quebec last week, not far from the U.S. border. This week, Ottawa revealed he was in Canada on a student visa. Alison Northcott has more.
Potentially both countries could charge him for different phases of this criminal conduct that he was allegedly involved in.
Robert Curry is a professor of transnational criminal law at Dalhousie University in Halifax. He says there's a cross-border element to the case against Mohammed Shahzab Khan because he was arrested in Canada for an attack he was allegedly planning in the States.
Well, we can't exactly try him on this side of the border for some of it, only to extradite him to the other side of the border to be tried again.
U.S. justice officials allege Khan, a Pakistani citizen living in the Toronto area, was planning a large, deadly attack targeting Jewish citizens in New York, attempting to travel from Canada to the U.S. to carry out the violence on October 7th, the anniversary of the Hamas attacks against Israel. The RCMP say Khan was arrested for alleged terror offenses and under the Extradition Act. However, Canada's prosecution service says so far Khan has not been charged in Canada. The U.S. is seeking to have Khan extradited from Canada to face terror charges in the States, with today's court hearing related to that extradition process. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Defense experts say sleeping bags are another sign of Canada's military procurement problems. Millions of dollars were spent on equipping soldiers with the gear. Only one problem, though. Murray Brewster explains.
Shoot when you're ready!
Canadian soldiers and rangers training in the Arctic, a frozen landscape where survival is more than half the battle and where you need to stay warm at all costs. More than 350 soldiers deployed in an exercise in Alberta last November found out the hard way. A leaked document obtained by CBC News shows troops were preparing for deep winter training in Alaska when they discovered the military's new sleeping bags couldn't handle the Canadian winter, despite costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. For their U.S. deployment, it was recommended the troops be issued old 1960s vintage bedrolls.
It's a metaphor of the problems that we're facing.
Rob Hubert is an Arctic defense expert who says he wonders what kind of testing was done before the new bedrolls were purchased. The Defense Department acknowledges the complaints and says it has now begun a new program to buy Arctic sleeping bags, but didn't say when they would be issued to the troops.
We're getting such difficulties and challenges for no-brainers such as sleeping bags. You know, and you start thinking about the over-the-horizon radars, the F-35s, and presumably the submarines at one point. I mean, it just does not fill one with too much confidence.
The Defense Department also acknowledges the incident last fall wasn't the first time they heard complaints about the new sleeping bags. Another separate unit also said they weren't warm enough. But in that case, the troops were told they didn't use them properly. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
To Moscow next, where President Vladimir Putin is issuing new threats against the West. He says if Ukraine is permitted to use Western long-range weapons to strike deep into Russia, he'll view that as NATO countries joining the war. Crystal Gamansing reports from London.
Russian President Vladimir Putin used his country's state media to fire off a warning to the West. He says if it lifts restrictions on donated long-range missiles, Russia would have to weigh countermeasures for its protection.
It's very difficult what to make of President Putin's words because he is such a liar.
Radoslaw Sikorski is Poland's foreign minister.
He lied that it wasn't his forces that did the Anschluss of Crimea. He lied that he had absolutely no intentions of invading Ukraine. And then he drew these red lines at every stage of our assistance to Ukraine.
The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in Washington. He and US President Joe Biden are discussing Ukraine's latest ask of its allies for restrictions on donated weapons to be lifted. Starmer, meanwhile, faces another Russian issue. 6 British diplomats are being expelled from the country, accused of spying and threatening Russian security. Peter Ricketts is the former head of the UK Foreign Office.
Of course, Putin is going to try and intimidate Western politicians and publics from taking this step. This is a trumped-up story to create pressure on the British government.
Russian officials say if more evidence of spying is uncovered, more British diplomats could be expelled. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
And finally, India's foreign ministry says efforts are underway to have 50 more Indian nationals discharged from the Russian army. Yesterday, Moscow released 45. Russia is accused of falsely inducing them to join the army and then forcing them into active combat in Ukraine. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more from Mumbai.
The joy and relief can't be contained for Naseem Banu Sayed. Somehow our son is coming home, she says. It's been more than 8 months of hell for the family in South India as they waited for word about 24-year-old Mohammed Sufyan, who was tricked into fighting for Russia in the Ukraine war. We'd be crying most days, racked with worry about our child, she says. We could barely eat. Sufyan was working in Dubai and his parents weren't even aware he was going to Russia. Their son thought he'd be assisting the Russian government, but ended up on the front lines, in the so-called red zone for a few months, barely 2 kilometers from the battlefield, he told his older brother Salman Zahor Sayed.
In their brain, they don't know nothing what we will do, where we will run.
Sayed says his brother saw 25 people die in front of him in an attack. He had to help carry the dead bodies back. Sufyan is one of several Indians forced to fight in the war who were released after diplomatic pressure. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pushed their case when he met with Russia's Vladimir Putin last July. So far, 45 Indian nationals have been repatriated, and 35 of them were discharged from the Russian army after that diplomatic chat, says Randhir Jaiswal, who speaks for India's foreign ministry.
There are 50-odd Indian nationals who are still with the Russian army, for whom we are trying our best to get them discharged as early as possible.
But the nightmare is over for Sufyan and 5 of his fellow soldiers. They're now back on Indian soil. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We are at the Friday morning show, and thank you for joining us and spending with some time with us this morning. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and on the app. We're also on YouTube. It is pretty calm out there in terms of the conditions. We're going to be warm again today, but there's more than that to the forecast. We could be wet actually a little bit later, a little bit of rain in the forecast. So we'll get details from Abby Adeyemi in just a moment. In this half hour of Information Radio, the Winnipeg Free Press was in hot water after they published a picture of Kathy Merrick after the late chief collapsed and died. We're going to talk to a community advocate about all of this at 8:10 and also learn together as a community about the significance of all of this and what is said when it comes to Indigenous culture and tradition around how things should be handled and how egregious it is to have a photo of someone like that. So stay tuned. Let's get in first to what is happening in the newsroom this morning. Heather Wells joins us with our headlines. Hi, Heather.
Hi there. Good morning. Well, private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, promising MRIs in days, not months. A clinic in Grand Forks recently mailed flyers to Winnipeggers advertising faster access to diagnostic tests. And another North Dakota clinic has ramped up its social media marketing targeting Canadians. We're going to hear from the Canadian Association of Medical Radiation Technologists coming up. And a Winnipeg man says it changed his life. Henry Jardell discovered a free outdoor gym in his community near Churchill High School. That gym was set up by the Manitoba Paddling Association. It's been in use since June, but it has its official opening today. We'll hear more coming up in our next news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, I've already mentioned a little bit about the weather. What can you tell us about today?
Clouds, showers, thunderstorm, breezy conditions. That's what we will be getting in most of the regions today. We're going to see high temperatures ranging from 16 in Churchill to 26 for Winnipeg and the Gimli area. Right now, we're starting the day warm, 21 in the downtown. We will see windy conditions. It's going to get warm, and then some clouds will roll in. A really good chance of scattered showers here and there late in the afternoon, along with some thunderstorms to go with that. Quite breezy, I'll tell you. We're going to get to a high of 26, and then tonight more cloudy conditions will stay with us. Down south, cloudy as well, and we're seeing temperatures already hovering around 20 degrees.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
And now it's time to find out what the Friday the 13th morning commute's going to look like.
Why is that date so
I don't know.
entertaining? Okay.
I don't know. Because some people are still superstitious, maybe.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Portage and Bedson, just got a call. Portage is actually fully closed between Cavalier and David due to a collision. There are emergency crews on scene, so avoid the area, expect delays. The person who called the commuter line said that things on eastbound Portage were already backed up all the way to the perimeter. So you're going to want to avoid Portage. It's closed. Cavalier and David, as I mentioned, due to a motor vehicle collision. If there is anything else getting in your way on your commute this morning, you can call our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
It is 8:13 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, next on CBC, as I mentioned, and you may have been following this story this week, the Winnipeg Free Press is in hot water after they published a photo of AMC Grand Chief, late AMC Grand Chief Kathy Merrick, after she collapsed and died. The image showed a crowd of staff and supporters gathering around the Grand Chief. Her upper body was visible, her face obscured by those around her. The AMC announced a boycott of the Free Press in a news release on Monday, stating it will not give any interviews to the Free Press and the publication will not be invited to any of its events. The AMC also asked that all chiefs and allies refuse interviews with the newspaper, encouraging businesses to cancel subscriptions and advertisements with the outlet until further notice. Now, the Winnipeg Free Press has since apologized and posted a column responding to concerns about the photo. Although the news outlet removed the image from the online article, the AMC is continuing the boycott. Premier Wab Kinew, meantime, says he will not be part of a boycott of the newspaper, but says he believes what it did was wrong. Viv Ketchum is Anishinaabe community advocate, who was also close, I want to mention, to Kathy Merrick, and is in studio with us this morning to talk about some of this. Good morning.
Morning.
So just so people can understand, what are the expectations around photographing someone who has died within the Indigenous community?
A lot of disrespect. I just want to go maybe just bring a little bit background to what happened that day. My people were at the law building, and I was at home and I wasn't feeling up to being with them. But then I started getting on my Facebook page. I started seeing prayers for Kathy, prayers for our chief, and that was puzzling because there was no live feed that they usually do, and I started getting an uneasy feeling in my stomach. And then I got messages that she was being rushed to the hospital, and I was told to keep that quiet. I said, which I would, and then it was just really, then all of a sudden, the Free Press posted that she passed away, and then there was pictures of her going around on live, and I still wouldn't post anything. I finally posted on my Facebook page that out of respect for Chief, I would not post anything regarding her. I was going to wait for the family. And then Grandma Shingoose asked me to come to the hospital, and I did. But before I went to the hospital, when I went to the hospital to meet family and friends that were all gathering at the hospital, I turned off my phone out of respect. And went and hugged Grandma Shingoose. I said goodbye to her, and I hugged the family and friends. But all of a sudden, I started seeing outside, there was people gathering in the family room. There was people outside in the hallway, lots of people. And there was a lot of Indigenous media people there, but they were being respectful. No pictures, nothing.
So some of this lies in the understanding about, within the cultural understanding of how the dead, what happens around someone if they've died. But also some of this, is it around the speed at which this was going out? As you said, that you were at home, friends and family, you had no idea what was even going on, and yet these pictures were already out there. Is some of in your view, is some of why people are so upset, including yourself, because of the speed at which the Free Press was putting this news?
When I was at the hospital and people were angry, I could see them trying to phone the Free Press. There was leaders and phoning the Free Press, trying to get that picture pulled down. At the law courts, when Kathy Merrick was talking about the sentencing of that and the other updates regarding another issue, that was news. That was news. That was okay. But when she collapsed on the ground, on the thing there, that was not news. And when you posted that picture of that, sorry, I'm finding this difficult.
Of course you are. I understand.
You robbed us. You robbed her of her dignity and respect. She was not a breaking news story at that time. She was someone's wife. She had 3 kids, grandchildren. She was our matriarch. She was our leader. She was not a breaking news story. This was so much disrespect at a different level. I'm a media person. I'm a freelancer. There was other media people there at the law courts, and they usually do live feed. They didn't. All they had said was prayers for Kathy, prayers for our chief. They did not post any live feed. They did not post any information or pictures. They were respectful there, and they were respectful at the hospital.
In your view, is this a moment where the Free Press has issued an apology? What do you think of the apology that was published?
I read the apology, but then when I came into your station here, I saw the Saturday Free Press, and they still printed the picture. And I don't see that as an apology. So
you're ripping it up.
Yep.
Yeah. Is this a moment for the Free Press and for the wider community that we live in for understanding why this was wrong? Like, is it... does the fact that they still printed the picture with the apology show that there's a misunderstanding of really getting why this was wrong? Or what's your view on that?
I think when they went ahead and published it anyway on hard copy, and they didn't remove it online till a couple of days later or a day later, and I think they wanted to get the more subscribers, more readers to read their page. Look, we got the scoop. She was not a scoop. She was not a news breaking story. This was not. This was our leader. This was our matriarch. This was our protector. This was our advocator.
So including that photo in the apology to you was just negates the apology in any way.
Mm-hmm.
The Premier, Wab Kinew, as I shared, has said he won't be part of a boycott of the newspaper. He did say, quote, "There is a real legitimate cultural norm here that was violated. There's a taboo around bodies and death that exists not just in Cree and Anishinaabe, but in many Indigenous nations." Is the taboo around an image of a person after they've passed, or can you explain some of the cultural taboo that the Premier's talking about?
Just the level of disrespect.
It's just seen as
violation of her image. And there's so much violence against Indigenous women in that, and this was another act of violence against our matriarch, and it's so hurtful. It's dealing with we're dealing with our grief, and then we have to also, on top of this, we have to deal with this anger and that invasion of privacy on this family.
How should media consult on Indigenous issues when they're called out?
Well, for example, when I was at the legislative building, was paying my respects to Kathy in that, I went outside and I saw other grassroots members like Geraldine Shingoose in that, and we're sitting there talking and sharing our memories of Kathy, and we're laughing and that, crying and that. We're just having that grieving moment. And then somebody took a picture of us. And I said, "What?" And they pointed out which one, and I went downstairs. I went over to the reporter. It was not the free press. I spoke to her and I said, "This was our grieving time. Please respect our privacy. At any other time, at a protest or a rally, you can take our pictures, but not today." And I did explain to her why. And I said, I've took a lot of pictures of Kathy and that, and it was like, right now we're sharing a lot of private moments, and this is our grieving time. Respect our space, respect our time. And so I went back to the group. But then later on, when I was heading home, the reporter came up to me and offered me a tobacco, and that was a sincere apology. She learned and acknowledged what she did wrong, and she removed the picture.
You posted on your Facebook page recently about an experience you had with a reporter at Kathy Merrick's when she was laying in state of the legislature this week. Is that the story you're referring to now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do we go from here, Viv, as a community, would you say? Or do you hope?
Well, I used to be a student at the photography class at Red River College, when it was still called Red River College, and I didn't see a lot of ways to do Indigenous photography. It's a lot different. They wanted to do photography of typical weddings and that, but there was a lot of Indigenous weddings I ordered, which is different, and I didn't see, and I got kind of kicked out of that class because of my little bit of loud voice.
Okay.
But
there was a misunderstanding, though, about culturally how to photograph at an Indigenous celebration even.
Yeah.
It's hard to articulate. I know I've asked you a couple of times, but around ceremony, around things, whether they are moments of birth, moments of death, moments of wedding ceremony, is that part of what is also happening? Just that there's an understanding in Indigenous communities about the personal and the private, and where that respect piece falls. Like, can you articulate, what was wrong even with the wedding photo?
Well, there's a lot of they wanted me to take pictures of a typical wedding gown, but I wanted to take pictures of weddings of an Indigenous wedding ceremony, and they didn't. They said, "No, we got to take pictures." I said, "Why?" I would like to take a picture of an Indigenous wedding ceremony, and they didn't go for that.
Okay, so that was a bit different issue altogether.
Yeah, and I have taken pictures of a traditional birth, and it was beautiful.
How much do you think, just as a last question, how much do you think that this comes down to all of us in Manitoba just, they're respecting each other, but also just talking to each other first, learning from each other, as you said. You had a moment with that reporter. You were offered tobacco. You see that as genuine. You're not going to boycott that reporter or whoever the organization is, presumably, right? Because you had that moment of a real moment with that person of connection. How much does moving forward now, how much work do we have to do so we all have more moments of connection, so we don't continue to be in these situations where offense is caused?
Listen, because I'm also in this similar boat I do take a lot of pictures at events and that, at vigils and that. I'm in the same boat. I ask politely, "May I take your picture?" Especially at vigils, and may I take your picture, especially of a grieving woman. If they don't allow it, then fine. Even at pipe ceremonies at the Forks, I see the MC telling people not to take pictures, but then I see a reporter with a long lens way in the back taking pictures with their zoom lens after they've been specifically asked not to take pictures of the pipe ceremony and that.
So there's some things here that we need to work through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Appreciate you coming in today. Thank you very much. I can't imagine the week that you've had. As we mentioned, this was your friend and obviously a huge loss. I thought that the what we were allowed to photograph of the legislature and the lone horse and was just both beautiful but also heartbreaking as that happened, the ceremony for Kathy Merrick.
Yeah, and what was happening inside was beautiful. The smudging, the pipe ceremony and that, and just all the people gathered there, all the ribbon skirts. She loved ribbon skirts.
Beautiful images coming out of that day.
Yeah, and
that are allowed. Yeah.
And one thing she was famous for was for her hugs. She would give hugs that squeeze the bannock out of you.
Let's leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you very much. What a lovely place to leave it. Hugs that squeeze the bannock out of you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in, Vivian.
Yeah.
Vivian Ketchum is Anishinaabe community activist. She was also a friend of Kathy Merrick. Of course, this week, the AMC announced that they have a boycott of the Free Press because of an image that was shown of the late chief, and the Free Press did since apologize. It is 8:27 a.m. on CBC.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
The call-in question today on Radio Noon, I'm filling in for Janet Stewart, continuing to host Noon. It's my last day on the show today. And between 12:30 and 1, the call-in question is going to relate to the fact that it is giveaway weekend in Winnipeg. That means you can put all your stuff out on the curb. Well, you should read the list of what you can put out. But people can come by and they can take stuff for free. Make sure you've got a sign in it that says free in case it's confusing and your lawnmower's out there and you don't want to take it. But yeah, it's giveaway weekend. So we're going to be asking between 12:30 and 1 about your finds, whether it was a giveaway weekends in the past or whether, your community's big on garage sailing or you head out and about. So wherever you are in Manitoba, you can weigh in on the call-in conversation. So we hope you join us between 12:30 and 1. Let's get into what is happening on the commute because all of a sudden it got busy. Chloe?
It got so busy. So I got a call from Erdit who says the Disraeli Bridge as you're heading into downtown. Just as you're approaching Main, there is a 3-car collision in the curb lane. So not causing too many backups, but just be aware if you're using the Disraeli Bridge to head into downtown, watch out for that curb lane. Got a call from Robin who says at the intersection of Fermor and St. Mary's Road, there is a collision that happened in the intersection. So far north is open. Folks heading north around that intersection can make it through, but the other lanes are blocked and it started to get quite backed up there. So that's Fermor and St. Mary's Road. And then lastly, Portage and Bedson. Portage is fully closed between Cavalier and David due to a collision there. There are emergency crews on scene, so be very careful if you're traveling in that area. Avoid it if you can. Expect delays at Portage and Bedson there. Last I heard, it was backed up almost to the perimeter. So you have one last chance to call with updates on the commuter line. If you're seeing anything else, you can add to the list. Just give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Chloe Friesen. And your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30, 21 degrees, Friday the 13th, and we're going to see the wind pick up, clouds move in, and a good chance of a late day shower, maybe even a thunderstorm. Today's high is 26. Manitobans facing long wait times for MRIs and other diagnostic tests are being lured south of the border. Private clinics in the U.S. are marketing to Manitobans, offering faster access to MRI and CT scans. One of them is Unity Medical Center in Grafton, North Dakota. The clinic, a 2-hour drive from Winnipeg, has ramped up its social media marketing to target clients in Canada. Jess Tankey is the clinic's radiology services supervisor.
They're just coming down because they can't get into Canadian doctors on a timely manner when they're in so much pain. So we can usually get them in within 2 weeks for an MRI at the latest. And then with the other services, we can usually get them in within the same week, if not the next day.
MRI scans at Unity start at just over $2,000 US. The clinic's CEO says they see 15 to 20 Canadian patients every month. Another clinic in Grand Forks recently mailed flyers to Winnipeg homes advertising MRIs in days. In Manitoba, in June, wait times for the province's 14 MRI scanners ranged from 8 weeks to more than 11 months. A person has been rushed to hospital in unstable condition after a crash on Portage Avenue at Bedson. Police say the call came in around 7:30 this morning. A vehicle slammed into a bus shelter and a gas pump. Portage Avenue from Cavalier and David is fully closed while police investigate. Well, if you're planning to fly Air Canada over the next few days, you need to contact the airline. Air Canada should start announcing plans for flight cancellations as early as today. It is in a contract dispute with its 5,200 pilots. Both sides are in a position to issue a strike or lockout notice as early as Sunday. That's when flight cancellations could begin in anticipation of a service disruption on Wednesday. Air Canada is calling on the federal government to intervene. The Manitoba Tories accuse the NDP of overspending. They base that on a favorable report this spring for Manitoba from credit rating company S&P Global. But S&P also says the government's cut back on capital spending by 40%, which would amount to more than $1 billion spending cut. Interim PC leader Wayne Iwasko says evidence of this will show when Manitoba Finance starts publishing financial data for the period since the NDP took power.
Mr. Canoe is a benefactor of a stable credit rating, but I think anything moving forward when we get into public accounts coming up here in the next short while, that's all going to be on Wab Canoe and the NDP government.
Finance Minister Adrian Salas says the opposition's claim is a mischaracterization because he says his government is simply not going ahead with all the provinces the PC's made before the last provincial election. There's another prospective candidate for leader of Manitoba's Progressive Conservative Party. Wally Doddridge, who owns a hotel and ecotourism business in Churchill, is preparing for a run. Fort White MLA Obby Khan and taxation expert Trevor Sprague are the other prospective candidates. There are no official candidates just yet. Brad Zander chairs the PC Leadership Selection Committee. He says all candidates have to be vetted, and that includes a criminal background check, a social media audit, and an interview. Zander says the party wants to make the process transparent.
We've told the candidates that if they do not make it through the vetting process, we'll provide them reasons in writing, and that as far as the committee is concerned, they're free to release that if they want to.
The deadline to apply to run for the PC leadership is October 15th, and the PCs pick their new leader in April. A Winnipeg man says a free outdoor gym in his neighborhood helped him lose 15 pounds in 3 months. Henry Jardell weighed up to 260 pounds. While out walking in June, the 60-year-old discovered an outdoor gym near Churchill High School. Jardell says he started working out there for almost an hour every day.
Changed my life. I used to sit around at home and do nothing, basically, just watch TV and this has gotten me like physically active and starting to get healthy again.
Jardell says as a retired person on a fixed income, he can't afford a gym membership. The free community gym was set up by the Manitoba Paddling Association with funding from the province. It has a range of equipment, including pull-up bars and weight machines. The gym has been in use since the end of June. However, its official opening is today. You can find stories about that, Jim, as well as other Manitoba news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, friend.
You're welcome.
All right, that is Heather Wells, and we can catch us in from our news center this morning. Big thanks to our news department for all their hard work. And in our unit in current affairs at CBC Manitoba, thanks to the people who work on all of the programs. Here's their names. These are our associate producers: Abby Adiyemi, Chloe Fries, Anissa Kixon, Kalkadamu Lageda, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, Jim Agapito, May McKillop, Bruce Layden, Marshall Hodgins, and Dylan Longhurst. Our community reporter in unit is Shanley Vidal, hosts in unit Nadia Kidwai and Faith Vidal, as well as Janet Stewart. Producer in unit Wendy Parker, and the YouTube producers Kevin Ipatebo. Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer in the current affairs unit overall, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio here at CBC Manitoba. So, Chloe, what's left on the commute here?
I'm going to do it real fast here. Portage and Bedson. Portage fully closed between Cavalier and David due to a collision with emergency crews on scene, so avoid that area. Expect delays. The Disraeli Bridge, as you're heading into downtown, there is a 3-car collision in your curb lane as you're approaching Main. Lastly, Fermor and St. Mary's Road, there's a crash in that intersection causing some issues, so avoid that area.
You have been amazing filling in for Corey. Thank you so much.
Happy to be here.
Have a wonderful time off. You got a little bit of time off coming up, so enjoy it.
Thank you.
Well deserved. All right, Abby.
Clouds, showers, winds across the province. That's the forecast for today. Possible thunderstorms in a lot of the areas. Also, we're going to see highs getting to 26. Late day showers. That's what I'll tell you will happen today.
You want to do my Friday groove with me? Friday.
Yeah.
We're always first to do the Friday groove. This is our little dance, me and Abby back and forth. We're ready for it. Enjoy it when you get there, folks. We're not quite there yet. We hope you join us on Radio Noon. I'm going to be hosting today. And take care in the meantime. Coming up next here on CBC, The Current.